On the night of the 24th of August 2001, a fully loaded Airbus A330 with 306 people on board ran out of fuel midway over the Atlantic. How could a state-of-the-art computerized airliner suffer such a catastrophic failure?
Mayday, mayday, mayday. We have lost both engines due to fuel starvation. We are gliding now. Well, we're now at 30,000 feet at the rate of descent of 2,000 feet per minute.
We have to ditch in the water.
I need you to put on your life jackets right now.
This film investigates what happened to Air Transat Flight 236.
This is it. It's over. You're just gonna die in the next 5 to 10 minutes.
And the speed's increasing, 203 knots now. It's way too fast.
Everybody, I need you to brace. Oh my God!
August 23rd, 2001. Toronto International Airport is busy. Air Transat is a charter company that has grown rapidly to become one of the largest airlines in Canada. Midsummer brings fewer business travelers and a holiday atmosphere. Air Transat Flight 236 is bound for Lisbon. Most of the passengers are Canadians visiting Europe or Portuguese immigrants heading home. The plane, a twin-engined Airbus A330, is being flown by a young co-pilot, Dirk de Jager, and an experienced captain, Robert Pichet.
Captain Robert Pichet is somewhat out of the ordinary. Captain Pichet, from the moment he gets his wing, he gets to learn how to fly in the north of the province of Quebec, where the conditions occasionally are very severe.
The flight deck of the A330 is ultra-modern. Banks of computers connected to over 100 onboard sensors constantly monitor the operation of the plane. This film reveals how serious problems can arise when the pilots begin to distrust the computers. Before departure, the computers give no indications of any problems with the Airbus.
236 Heavy, follow A320 Air Canada. Turn left on Romeo and hold short on 24 right.
Roger, follow A320 Air Canada, left on Romeo, and hold short of 24 right.
With the crew of 7, Flight 236 has 306 people on board.
No, we were married for 4 days, wasn't it?
4 days.
4 days.
4 days. So we had planned to go to Portugal for our honeymoon, and we had booked this flight on Air Transat. And rather quickly, because we hadn't really planned what we were going to do very carefully. So this was the last flight left.
Well, boarded on this flight to go on a 2.5-week vacation with a friend of mine. Obviously, I was very excited, spending 2.5 weeks on the coast of Portugal. A very excited feeling.
Transat 236 Heavy, cleared for takeoff.
240 at 8, cleared for takeoff, 24 right, Transat 236 Heavy.
At 20 minutes past 8, the Airbus A330, loaded with over 47 tons of fuel, leaves Toronto for Lisbon.
V1, rotate.
The weather forecast for the Atlantic crossing is good. Everything runs smoothly on the flight deck, apart from a small adjustment to the route. To avoid congestion, air traffic control directs the flight 60 miles south of its original route. It's a minor alteration, but will later play a crucial role. The passengers settle down for the long crossing.
The reason for our trip to Portugal was a family trip. We were going to a wedding. Otherwise, we would not have gone this year. So instead of just going for 4 days for a wedding, we decided to stay for 2 weeks and throw the wedding in as a kind of family perk and see everybody.
Everything appeared quite normal, and in fact, I had traveled on Air Transat previously and found it not to be very good, and was surprised by the quality of the flight, that it was on time, the plane was newer, and we thought generally it was much better than we had expected it would be.
We're getting to our next checkpoint.
Every 30 minutes across the Atlantic, the crew check their position and fuel consumption against their flight plan.
0.2 tons on the right, 11.2 tons on the left.
Despite the computerized systems, some procedures, like checking the fuel on board, still need to be done by hand.
5.2 tons.
By comparing the amount of fuel in the tanks with the amount the flight started with, the pilots can keep an eye on the fuel consumption.
Fuel check complete. Levels normal for the distance flown.
All right.
For the first 5 hours, everything is routine. The flight crew, Air Transat, and the accident investigators have all declined to be interviewed about what happened next. This film uses known facts about the flight, standard emergency procedures, and expert opinion to reconstruct what took place on Flight 236.
Look, we're getting a warning signal. Oil temp low and oil pressure high on number 2. What?
This warning is the first step in the crisis.
Oil pressure is within normal limits on number 1. And number 2 is slightly high.
The computer display reveals that the oil temperature is low in engine number 2, but the oil pressure is high. It is a very unusual reading. The pilots are puzzled.
I can't see anything here. I'll look in the FCOM.
Okay.
A low oil temperature indication is normally indicative of bad readings, bad sensor. Oil temperatures don't decrease normally, they increase. A low oil temperature would be of no concern. The high oil pressure is a very strange indication. It's very rare. In fact, I've never actually heard of one. It's only indicative of the contamination normally of the oil with fuel. That's not something that's explained in the manuals.
Call the company.
The crew contact Air Transat's maintenance group in Montreal.
Transat 236 to Mirabel Operations.
Mirabel Transat 236. Hi.
Hi, we have a little problem. We're getting the warning oil temp low and oil pressure high on the ECAM for engine number 2. There's nothing in the QRH nor the FCOM. Can you help us out?
I'm looking in the manual.
The ground crew have no immediate solution. The pilots must work it out for themselves.
They may have been given some advice on troubleshooting to see if that would help. But ultimately, the pilots are up there on their own. They can get advice from somebody 2,500 miles away, but they can't really fix their problems.
Suggest you keep monitoring your oil levels and see what happens. Advise us on
But because the oil readings are so unusual, the pilots believe they may indicate a computer error. The crew keep monitoring the oil levels. Air Transat 236 continues on track. Then, 20 minutes later, a new warning.
Fuel imbalance warning. Haven't seen that before. Follow all ECAM action. I have air traffic control.
In the Airbus A330, most of the fuel is in large tanks in the wings. The computer has now detected that the fuel level on the right is significantly lower than the left. The crew consult the Airbus flight manual, which recommends they transfer fuel through a special cross-feed valve. Fuel will then flow from one tank to the other. But before opening the cross-feed, the pilots must be sure that the imbalance is not caused by a more serious problem, such as a fuel leak.
Last fuel check was only 15 minutes ago and it was okay. No indication of a fuel leak. Keep going.
Wing crossfeed. On.
On.
Once you begin a cross-feeding procedure to correct a fuel imbalance, restorative action should commence quite quickly. In other words, the situation would not continue to get worse. It would either stabilize immediately and then begin to correct itself.
But the situation is not correcting itself. Unknown to the pilots, there is a major fuel leak in the number 2 engine on the right-hand side of the plane. Flight 236 is in mid-Atlantic, nearly 300 kilometers from the nearest land. "39,000 feet over the Atlantic, nearly 300 kilometers from land, Air Transat Flight 236 is in trouble. Unknown to the pilots, the right engine is leaking fuel. The plane's computer system has thrown up a series of warnings, but the pilots believe these are computer errors.
Have you ever seen something like this before?
No. Never. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, even if there is a leak, it doesn't explain the alarms on the oil system.
And everything was okay at the last fuel check at 30 West. Oh. Bet you it's a computer problem.
The task of finding out if there is a fuel leak is made harder by the design of the Airbus systems.
The systems monitor hundreds and hundreds of sensors, and they can be affected by such mundane things as a little bit of frost or ice on a sensor can cause it to present bad data. So it's not something that would occur on every single flight, but it's something that we're quite used to dealing with.
There is no warning to show if the fuel level is falling faster than the engines are consuming it. So the pilots receive no immediate indication that there could be a fuel leak.
Fuel quantity isn't rising in the tanks for the right wing.
Check fuel quantity.
Looks very low. Hold on.
When co-pilot Diego carries out the fuel calculations, he discovers something is seriously wrong.
That's much less fuel than we should have. It looks like a fuel leak.
Check again.
Diego finds a disturbing difference.
According to all the gauges, all the tanks in the right wing are way below the level they should be according to the flight plan. And there's hardly anything in the other ones.
What about the trim tank?
There's nothing there either.
Yes?
Hello, first officer here.
Can you come to the cockpit, please?
Sure.
Although Captain Pichet believes he is dealing with a computer problem, he nevertheless decides to ask for a visual check, just in case, to see if there could be a fuel leak.
Captain?
Hi. Can you and Karen take some flashlights and go to the windows if you can see anything trailing back from the wings? It'll look like a mist or a stream, and report back immediately.
Okay.
Dirt, I want you to do another complete fuel check, please.
I'm so sorry.
In daylight, the fuel pouring out of the back of the wing would have been clearly visible. But in the dead of night, even with a torch, the fuel leaking from the engine is impossible to see.
The crew evidently realized that the situation was not improving, and at that point they realized that their circumstances were becoming more serious. And I think that there were probably some discussions took place between the two pilots as to what their next course of action should be.
If the computer is correct, then with the amount of fuel remaining, the Airbus will no longer be able to make it to Lisbon. Captain Pichet is forced to make a crucial decision.
We've got to divert. Get on to Oceanic Control. Where's the nearest airfield?
Transat 236 Heavy, Santa Maria Control. Can you advise nearest airfield? We have a possible fuel problem.
The nearest runway is over 300 kilometers away. But with the fuel remaining, Leger's military airbase on the tiny island of Terceira in the Azores should be within reach.
Santa Maria Control, Transat 236 Heavy. Proceed 230 flight level 390 direct. 350 miles to threshold. Are you declaring an emergency?
Stand by, Santa Maria Control.
Not yet. It must be the computer.
Transat 236 Heavy, Santa Maria Control. No assistance required yet.
Flight 236 continues flying south for the next 25 minutes. Everything in the cabin seems normal. But in the cockpit, the fuel readings are getting worse.
Must be the computer.
I've checked. There's nothing in the trim or center tank. And the gauges show only 7.5.
According to the fuel gauges, the plane is using fuel much faster than normal. Whether they believe the gauges or not, the captain has no choice. He must warn air traffic control.
We have to declare a fuel emergency.
Transat 236 Heavy, Santa Maria Control.
Santa Maria Control, Transat 236 Heavy, go ahead.
Transat 236 Heavy, declaring fuel emergency.
I really hope it's a computer bug. Because if we land in the Azores with half a plane full of fuel, they'll crucify us.
But at 6:13 a.m., less than an hour from the first fuel alarm, the right-hand engine runs out of fuel and cuts out.
We're losing engine number 2. I don't believe this. Okay, maximum thrust on number 1.
What's going on? What's
The
happening?
lights started flickering on and off, which I thought was kind of odd, strange.
On one engine, the Airbus will not fly at 39,000 feet. They must descend quickly.
Try to transfer fuel from center tank and the trim tank.
Transferring. Fuel quantities reaching 0.
This can't be. We're not gonna go completely dry on this airplane. All right. We can't stay at 39,000 feet with just one engine. We'll descend to 33,000 to control our speed.
236 Villages Tower. We have lost one engine. Engine flame out.
Roger, Transat 236. We can see you on primary radar. You are at 135 nautical miles from Lajes Field.
We are 135 nautical miles from Lajes Field.
Well, there's a whole lot of critical things go on. In addition to that, you turn on all the exterior lights so people can see you're in trouble. You have to broadcast your intentions on an emergency frequency so that other people know that you're unable to maintain your altitude. You may be descending through their altitude, so everybody else is now on the lookout for an airplane that's in distress.
For the next 10 minutes, the stricken Airbus continues on its one remaining engine. The pilots still believe that the computer may be partly faulty and that they can make it to Leger's with fuel to spare.
At the end, might be all right.
Fuel gauge is falling fast, though. It's nearly hitting 0.
But 13 minutes after the right-hand engine cut out, and with 130 kilometers still to go, the left engine begins to fail.
we're losing number one.
Mayday, mayday, mayday. We have lost both engines due to fuel starvation. We are gliding now.
One of the most sophisticated airliners of the modern era, carrying 306 passengers and crew, is now nothing more than a giant glider, drifting steadily down towards the ocean.
Excuse me, can somebody come? Hello?
You can literally hear a pin drop. The exterior, there was no sound in that plane, in that cabin at all.
A lot of people were praying and screaming for God.
My wife was a little hysterical. My best friend was in another world.
The plane was dead silent, except for the people who were very upset.
List of functions we've lost. We have no more stabilizer. Blue and yellow hydraulic. No ADR 2 and 3. No anti-skid. No reversers. Rudder trim. Radio HF 1 and 2.
With the loss of both engines, we have no electrical system. If the engines aren't running, the generators aren't running. So there's no power on the airplane. There is a small device, it's called a ram air turbine. It will deploy from underneath the fuselage near the wing fairing. And it's a small propeller that deploys out the bottom of the fuselage and it spins in the wind. And that small propeller will provide very limited electrical and hydraulic systems to run the aircraft. In other words, although it's a glider, at least it's a controllable glider.
Calculate how far we can go with our glide angle, will you?
Well, we're now at 30,000 feet at the rate of descent of 2,000 feet per minute. We can hang on for 14 or 15 minutes.
What? I don't want to die on our honeymoon.
I was just trying to calm her down, like try and reassure her that everything would be okay.
It's a very big struggle to stay calm when you're considering your own death.
Without power, the plane loses 1,000 feet in height for every 5 kilometers it travels forward. They can reach the Azores, but if the pilots get their calculations wrong, they may face a forced landing on the water.
Not sure we can make it to Leges.
Air Transat Flight 236 is now drifting without fuel over the Atlantic. Although their initial calculations show that the plane should make it to Leges, Captain Pichet must now follow standard emergency procedure for a passenger jet over water.
Prepare the cabin.
The cabin's slowly depressurizing.
We need to put our oxygen masks on.
The loss of engine power means the cabin soon depressurizes.
Everybody, please, I need your attention. We're preparing to ditch the plane. I need you to put on your life jackets right now.
Within probably, I'd say, 2 minutes, I saw flight attendants with life jackets in their hand running down the aisles. And obviously, that was a sign of fear. What was happening was the first question that popped in my mind.
We just need to tie this up like that.
You don't really know what to think, but people did start to panic at that point when they were told to put on life jackets.
This isn't working. No, it's all right. Please keep her calm.
My best friend was talking to his father. His father died 3 years ago. But he's talking to him because he thought for sure he was going to be joining him. And I just kept the same reiteration. Oh, it's okay, one hand on one leg, one hand on the other, both their arms clenched to mine, kind of looking at my in-laws, blinking. It's okay, it's nothing.
I kept thinking that if the plane did hit water, that we would survive. I was so convinced that we would survive no matter what happened to the plane that I was probably delusional.
fear just suddenly just kicked in from my toes straight up to my head. At that point, they started instructing us and giving us instructions of what to do in this procedure. Take off your shoes was one of them. Don't inflate your life jacket until we hit the water. Get into this position when we hit the water. It was a lot of, it wasn't like ifs or maybes. It was, this was gonna happen, this is the real deal.
Ditching a large passenger jet on the water presents severe hazards. If the Airbus A330 has to make a forced landing, the chances of survival are bleak.
In my personal opinion, I don't think these airplanes would make very good boats. Typically, an airplane with a low mounted tail like this, as it enters the water, one of the first things that's going to hit the water is the tail, and it's probably going to be ripped right off, and the fuselage is probably going to open right about there.
In 1996, a Boeing 767 ran out of fuel off the coast of East Africa. Its last moments were caught on amateur video and reveal what happens when an airliner attempts a controlled landing on water. Of the 175 people on the Ethiopian Airways jet, only 50 survived.
The chances of it surviving a ditching and floating for very long are not very good.
If Air Transat Flight 236 has to carry out a similar maneuver, it faces an equally grave outcome. With over 100 kilometers before they reach the Azores, the pilots face a long and difficult maneuver. They need to keep the plane gliding for more than 50 minutes to reach the Azores.
There's very little time for any emotions at all. You're just so focused on the mission at hand. It's a life or death situation, of course, but you know, your intention is to get it there. You're not thinking about the alternatives, but you're fully focused on getting the airplane to its destination.
Transat 236 Heavy to Lajes Tower. Lajes Tower receiving, Transat 236 Heavy.
Do you have us
On radar, Transat 236. We have you on primary radar. Confirm you're at 80 miles out. Your heading is good.
Transat 236 Heavy Lajes Tower? We are trying to make the runway. Please
Describe runway, heading, and length. Lajes Tower, Transat 236 Heavy. Runway is 33 and 10,865 feet long. Airport dead ahead on your present heading. Please advise when you have it in sight.
Transat 236 Heavy, we cannot see the airport. We will tell you when we can.
As the minutes tick by, the long wait for those on board is agonizing.
That's it. This is it. It's over. They're just gonna die in the next 5 to 10 minutes.
I had contemplated the idea that we would die, certainly. And kind of I think in that moment you can accept it more than you think you would accept it.
I never thought I was gonna die. I was in a little bit of a state of distress. I did my best not to show it, to try to keep the cool, calm, and collected, but there was certain times where I wasn't sure if we would make it.
The torture of the whole fact that you're gonna die, which I totally thought I was going to, is worse to me than dying. If I'm gonna die, just kill me now. Just get a gun and shoot me, or just let this plane go down and nosedive into the ocean and then just die instantly.
On the ground, emergency services prepare for the crash landing of a fully loaded airliner. With 20 kilometers to go, the crew now prepare for the most dangerous part of the operation, getting their plane on the runway in one piece.
6 Heavy to Lajes Tower. Do you have our distance from threshold now and weather, please?
Roger, Transat 236 Heavy. You are 8 miles out according to primary radar. Airspeed 280 knots according to our readings. Visibility unlimited. You should have the airport in sight. Negative, Lajes Tower. Until now, we cannot see the runway.
There is no room for error. Without power, the pilots have only one chance at landing. If they miss or overshoot the runway, the results could be catastrophic.
I got it. Just to the right. Minimum RAD speed is 140 knots. Maximum speed for gravity gear extension, 200 knots.
I'm not lowering the gear until the last minute, okay?
Okay.
The crew struggle to lose height and speed for landing.
Roger, Lajes. 6 nautical miles.
Let's open the slats. It'll slow us down a bit.
Slats out and locked.
As they approach the runway, their speed increases dangerously. Too fast and they could roll off the end of the runway.
Lower the gear.
Hold on. Speed is about 200. All right. I stabilize the speed. Can you give me a landing speed, please?
No engine, no flaps. Ideal approach speed is 170 knots. We're too fast.
Yes. But the runway is very long.
Captain Pichet now performs a difficult series of swerving maneuvers to slow the plane down for landing.
The plane was almost on a 45-degree angle. I thought it was just gonna flip over and just nosedive straight down.
The plane was circling around the island to slow down. So then we saw land and then we saw water. And when I saw water again, it really struck me that, you know, our chance for survival had maybe was gone.
The runway is long. Yeah, sure, but at the end is a 400-foot cliff. If we don't stop in enough time, we're toast. We're dead.
The crew line up the giant Airbus for final approach.
Landing gear down and locked. 3 green. No flaps. Only the emergency brakes. No spoilers, no reverse thrust. 4,000 feet, 195 knots. "3,000 feet, 197 knots. "2,000 feet, 200 knots.
Alert the cabin.
Cabin crew, 1 minute to landing.
Hang on. Let's go.
Vertical speed at 3,000 feet per minute. We're going way too fast. And the speed's increasing, 203 knots now. It's way too fast. 1,000 feet, 201 knots.
I'll try to get the nose up. We'll ride fast.
But even if the crew can get the Airbus on the runway, they face a further problem. Without engines, the normal procedures for braking are severely restricted. For Flight 236, the danger is far from over. The pilots must land the plane without power and somehow get it to stop.
Everybody, I need you to brace.
Airbus hits hard at high speed.
The tires have blown!
Captain Pichet tries to hold the nose down. After bursting 8 tires, the plane finally stops in the middle of the runway.
What we say? We made it! We made it! We made it! Yeah, we made it!
Come on, everybody, get out of the plane right now.
Let's get it!
Come on, come on.
Told you we'd make it.
I just wanted to get out of this airplane quickly. I jumped, I hit the ground hard. I don't think my rear end actually even touched the chute at all.
I didn't slide down the slide. I ran down it. And they're just, get out, get out, get out. So you're just running out of this aircraft.
What in God's name just happened? I fell down to the ground, literally, and I started crying.
I mean, once you're off the plane and you're evacuated, you want to know what happened.
Pichet and de Jager had flown their Airbus without power further than any passenger jets in history. As news of their remarkable achievements spread around the world, they found themselves reluctant heroes.
You don't have time really to think about anything else than taking care of the safety of your passenger, you know. That's your main goal, and since we didn't have any engine, the other main goal was to make the landing safely. So at that time, I guess the experience came in, you know. With the help of my colleague, that's why we made a successful landing.
You train for the worst, but you never know how you'll deal with situations like this. And reflecting afterwards, I feel we dealt in the most professional and complete manner we could.
A feeling of being grateful to see all the passengers were okay.
You know, something like this happened, you never know what is going to happen really. I mean, you start not to believe it. I mean, makes no sense that a big jet with 2 engines has no more power with 300 people on board, you know.
But although the public story was a success, disturbing questions remained. Why had a highly sophisticated airliner run out of fuel? What exactly had happened to Flight 236? Away from the cameras, an accident investigation began immediately by the Portuguese, Canadian, and French transport authorities. Initial checks quickly confirmed that all the fuel tanks of the Airbus were indeed empty. But to lose more than 17 tons of fuel in such a short space of time meant they'd had a major leak. The question was, where? Engineers examined the fuel system, searching for faults in the tanks and the fuel lines. It wasn't long before they found what they were looking for, just by the right engine.
In this particular case, you had a hydraulic tube that's relatively small by comparison to the larger fuel tube. And the hydraulic tube, due possibly to pulsations in the hydraulic system, were abrading against the larger tube. And eventually the larger tube had a leak in it, and the leak, or not the leak itself, but the hole eventually possibly led into a fracture of the tube, allowing this massive fuel flow outside of the engine.
The investigators began checking Air Transat maintenance records. They discovered that on the 17th of August, 5 days before the flight, Air Transat had removed the right-hand engine for maintenance and installed a replacement unit sent by Rolls-Royce. But as they analyzed the repair logs for the engine, they uncovered a shocking mistake. This was not a case of faulty design, but of faulty maintenance. Rolls-Royce had supplied the engine without a hydraulic pump assembly. To overcome this, Transat mechanics had used the parts from an older engine. But they didn't fit properly, and the pipes had been rubbing together for 5 days, until, midway over the Atlantic, one finally broke.
The engine was delivered minus these 2 tubes and a bracket. that the purpose of that bracket was to maintain adequate clearance. So if they took the bracket off the old engine and put it on the new engine, is that the pipes would be locked together so that they could possibly abrade. So the mechanics, now I can't fault them, but they were not given specific instructions to verify the 3 millimeter clearance.
As investigators questioned Air Transat mechanics, they found more disturbing evidence of malpractice. The chief mechanic testified that he had been concerned about the substitution of another hydraulic assembly. 5 days before the accident, he raised his concerns with his superior. He was told that it would cost too much to have the aircraft waiting for the missing parts and to go ahead with the substitution. The replacement parts only differed from the correct ones by a few millimeters, but it was a difference that almost cost 306 lives. A few days after the accident, Air Transat publicly accepted responsibility for the faulty maintenance.
We have to realize that there was a small mistake made in terms of changing the pump. We installed it, but then some pipes, so to speak, were needed to be connected to the pump, and there was a mismatch.
The immediate consequences for Air Transat in that event was that they got to pay a fine of $250,000, which was the highest ever in Canada, for an error that could have been prevented.
How someone that is supposed to be qualified in their job can put the wrong part onto an engine and risk 300 people's lives is beyond me.
This incident is a very strong reminder that regulation is important and safety is important, and lives will be lost in the absence of that. And they're real lives. It's not just, this imaginary figure in your head of 300 people. It's real people who suffer and continue to suffer as a result. If it hadn't been us suffering, it would have been our families.
This was by no means the end of the story. Investigators now turn their attention to the cockpit itself. What role had the crew played in the events of August the 24th? Could they have done more to avert the crisis? Key questions remained unanswered. Questions about what happened on the flight deck. The investigation into Air Transat Flight 236 discovered that basic maintenance errors had led to the fuel leak. Air Transat accepted responsibility and were heavily fined. But the focus now turned on the flight deck and the performance of the crew. What part did they play in the fuel loss?
Wing crossfeed. On.
On.
When the crew opened the crossfeed valve to transfer fuel from the left wing tank to the right, they lost 17 tons of fuel in less than 30 minutes. Yet they failed to close the crossfeed valve and prevent further loss.
Mayday, mayday. We have lost both engines due to fuel starvation. We are gliding now.
In the days after the incident, Captain Robert Pichet and Dirk de Jager were called before the inquiry and asked in detail about their actions. More than 2 years later, these findings have still not been published. What follows are possible explanations for the course of events that night, based on known facts and expert opinion.
Oil temp low and oil pressure high on number 2.
The warnings of high oil pressure and low oil temperature from the engine on the right wing would not have led the pilots to suspect that there was already a major fuel leak.
The indications that were being presented with respect to the oil system would probably not give the crew any indications. They may have questioned what was causing the erroneous or strange indications, But there's nothing certainly in my mind or their training, I think, that would have triggered them to suspect that a fuel system might be involved.
Bet you it's a computer problem.
But although the pilots thought they had a computer error, the oil warnings were actually correct and were the first indication of a much more serious problem.
Fuel imbalance warning. Haven't seen that before.
When the fuel imbalance warning came up 20 minutes later, showing less fuel in the right wing than the left, it seemed unconnected with the oil alarms. This could have reinforced Captain Pichet's idea that he was facing a series of computer errors.
Do not apply this procedure if a fuel leak is suspected.
Despite his doubts, Captain Pichet was obliged to follow Airbus procedure to correct the imbalance. He opened the crossfeed valve.
Wing crossfeed. On.
But was following the checklist enough?
You just can't idly flip switches in response to commands from the computers and anticipate that all will be well at the end of it. Once the checklist is complete, we can sit there fat, dumb, and happy. That's not the case at all. You got to keep second guessing it. Is that right? Did we do the right checklist? Have we got the results that we need?
Once the pilots calculated the high rate of fuel loss, they should have suspected a major leak.
Transat 236 Heavy declaring fuel emergency.
By the time they had confirmed the leak, their options were severely limited.
They were flying blind, as it were. There was no checklist information provided to them. They assumed that once they had engaged in this procedure that the situation would resolve itself, and it wasn't. Now they had a choice. Do I close the crossfeed and see what happens, or do I leave the crossfeed open as the fuel imbalance checklist has dictated, and maybe the situation will correct itself? The crew wasn't really sure. It wasn't an eventuality. It wasn't a situation that they had been trained for, I'm sure. They were in new ground with really no guidance to help them. If they left the crossfeed open, or whether they closed the crossfeed, I would only be speculating as to what changes it might have resulted in the outcome in this event.
Captain Pichet believed for a long time that he was facing a computer error. It was only when the engines finally stopped that he had to accept the fuel leak was genuine. The technological complexity of modern aircraft can help to make them safer and more reliable, but it can also lead to the problems that nearly brought catastrophe to Air Transat 236. Discrepancies in replacement parts led to a fuel leak. Distrust of computers led the crew to misread the situation. These errors combined to have huge implications. Only because air traffic control initially sent the plane 60 miles south to avoid congestion was Flight 236 close enough to the Azores when the crisis struck. Otherwise, it would have had to ditch in the ocean. The investigation remains unpublished. Airbus blamed the pilots for mishandling the fuel leak. Robert Pichet and Dirk de Jager continued to fly with Air Transat. In August 2002, they received the highest honors of the Airline Pilots Association for the longest glide ever accomplished in a passenger airline. After the accident, Airbus modified its checklist in the event of fuel imbalance. From now on, the computer checks all the fuel levels on board against the flight plan. It now gives a clear warning if more fuel is being lost than the engines can consume. Rolls-Royce has reissued a service bulletin, alerting all its clients of the incompatibility of two almost similar parts. For the passengers trapped on Flight 236, the trauma has left them with mixed feelings.
All right, I stabilized the speed.
This accident wasn't caused by simply one omission by any one individual, as is typical of most aircraft accidents. There's a whole chain of events, a whole series of events that lead to the incident or to the accident, and this accident was no different.
whatever the circumstances are, the pressure that he was under is tremendous. He got that plane down safely, only blew out 8 of the 12 tires, and saved 300 people. He saved 300 people's lives.
Captain Pichet saved our lives, and whether or not he made an error, or if there was a failure of a computer, it doesn't really matter because we're alive.
Do I think he's a hero? No. Do I think he's a hell of a pilot? Yes.
Thank God the islands of the Azores were there and basically saved our lives. But if that fuel pump broke 5 minutes beforehand, we would have ended up into the water, and I probably wouldn't be here to tell the story.
High above the Indian Ocean, disaster strikes.
The engine's on fire!
More than 10 kilometers in the air, all 4 engines of a British Airways 747 stop working.
Roger, declare emergency.
Mayday, 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 Speedbird 9.
With no engines and little power, British Airways Flight 9 falls towards the ocean.
Standby ignition on.
The crew fight to keep their plane from crashing into the sea. What has crippled their massive jet, threatening the lives of everyone on board?
Mayday, mayday.
June the 24th, 1982. British Airways Flight 9 cruises through the sky over Indonesia. In a few hours, the plane and all 263 people on board are scheduled to land in Perth, Australia. Phyllis Welch and her daughter are seated in cabin E at the very back of the enormous jet.
How's that heroine of yours, Fanny Price, faring?
Oh, she's having a tough old time at Mansfield Park. It's a good place for me to spend a few hours.
Wouldn't mind being there myself.
It's all right, Mum, we'll get there.
We had already traversed at least 2 time zones. We were very tired. We had flown through Bombay, through Kuala Lumpur, hadn't been able to get much sleep, if any, and it was a dark, dark, pitch-black night.
Ahead of Betty and Phyllis, Charles Capewell is returning home to Perth, Australia, with his 2 boys, Chaz and Stephen.
Right, settle down, lads. Come on. It's time for a nap. Get back to your seat.
No.
What, do you want to sleep here? All right.
It was a good flight. It was going well. Leaving London, it was great. And we was all eager to go home, and the 2 boys were eager to get back to Mum. I thought, well, we'll be home in 3 hours, Perth. They'll be pat and we'll get in a taxi and we'll be home.
While many of the passengers have been traveling for almost a day, the crew is fresh. They took control at the last stopover in Kuala Lumpur. Captain Eric Moody got his first taste of flying at the age of 16 when he took a gliding lesson. He was one of the first ever trained on the 747.
Roger, check with Jakarta.
Jakarta Control, Speedbird 9 over Halim at level 370.
Speedbird 9, Roger.
First Officer Roger Greaves has been a co-pilot for more than 6 years. Barry Townley Freeman has been a flight engineer on these aircraft for just a little longer.
I'd not flown with Eric before, or Barry. That was the first time we'd actually met on that flight.
As the jet flies over the city of Jakarta, it's cruising at more than 11,000 meters and has been in the air for an hour and a half. Captain Moody checks his weather radar. It shows smooth sailing for the next 500 kilometers.
All right, Roger, it's all clear. Just keep your eyes open. I'll be back in a moment. Just got to use the loo.
Back in the cabin, many of the passengers have fallen asleep. While Charles Capewell and his sons doze, an ominous haze appears above their heads. It's still legal to smoke on passenger jets in 1982. For the cabin crew, though, the smoke seems thicker than normal.
Seems to be a lot of smoke out there.
They begin to worry that a small fire may be smoldering somewhere on the plane.
Maybe someone lit up in the toilet. Let's go see if we can find anything.
A fire at 11,000 meters is a terrifying prospect. If there is a blaze somewhere, the crew must find it immediately. In the cockpit, the flight takes an unsettling turn.
Barry and I were just sitting there minding the shop. Pitch dark night, of course. And then we started to get these pinpricks of light on the windscreen.
St. Elmo's fire? I don't think so.
St. Elmo's fire is a natural phenomenon that's sometimes seen when planes fly through highly charged thunderclouds. But there aren't supposed to be any thunderclouds tonight.
Anything on the radar? No. No, it's clear. I don't like the look of this. Let's get a better look out there.
With the help of their landing lights, the two men are disturbed to see a thin layer of cloud surrounding their plane, even though nothing is showing up on their radar.
But at 37,000 feet, the normal thing you would anticipate would be high cirrus, which is just a thin layer of cloud.
I think we better get the captain back up here.
I was reading in my book, and there was a slight flick of turbulence, just a slight flick, and I glanced over to the left, where I had a clear view of the port wing, and to my surprise, it was covered in a brilliant, white, shimmering light, which seemed to be clinging to the wing of the aircraft. I carried on reading, but I found that I kept reading the same paragraph over and over again and not taking in a word of it. I just didn't know what was happening.
In the cabin, the smoke begins to thicken. Stewards have been unable to figure out where it's coming from. If there's a fire, they can't find it.
All right, well, go see that the passengers are comfortable.
Smell anything odd, Mum?
Seems rather smoky in here.
I noticed that thick smoke was pouring into the cabin through the vents above the windows. And that was a very sobering sight.
Turkish cigarettes.
It smelt like sort of a sulfuric electrical smell. And I went on that flight deck expecting to hear that we had some electrical smoke somewhere on the aircraft. But nothing was further from the truth.
When did it start? Or just after you stepped out? Anything on radar? No, it's clear, not a cloud. Oh my lord, look at engine 4! It's lit up somehow. Captain, have a look at number 1.
It's the same on my side.
None of the crew have ever seen anything like this before, but the light show is just the beginning. Their bizarre flight is about to take a terrifying turn for the worse. Strange lights are striking the windshield of a British Airways passenger jet heading to Perth, Australia. At the same time, the plane's engines are lit by a brilliant white glow.
Look at engine 4. It's lit up somehow.
This light show, if you like, had become more intense. In fact, we ended up sitting there with 2 sheets of brilliant white light in front of us in place of the windscreens.
Inside the cabin, smoke has been growing thicker. Chief Steward Graham Skinner has been organising an intense but quiet search for fire.
What's with all the smoke?
There was smoke in the cabin. It got really, really hot. You were perspiring, literally drenched in perspiration. The acrid smoke was at the back of your throat, up your nose, in your eyes, and you were rubbing this and your eyes were running, and it was, it's not a very nice situation at all.
Flight engineer Barry Townley Freeman has been checking his instruments carefully. He's smelled the smoke, but so far has no indication that there's a fire in any of the plane's systems.
We can't find anything.
With one mystery confronting them, they're suddenly faced with a frightening new situation.
Dad! The engine's on fire!
The whole of the wing was a sheet of light. And I thought, wow. I said, oh, you better close that because we don't know what's that.
Cheers. Sit down.
Where'd they go?
Stephen, close the blind.
Then I realised that, something was dramatically wrong.
There were huge flames coming out of the back of the engines, 20, some people said 40 feet long. These huge jets of sheer flame shooting out of the back of all the engines. Is it going to penetrate from the outside of the aircraft? Is it going to come into the cabin? Are we going to burn to death? Are we going to choke to death on the smoke? What's going to happen? What's causing it? What are they going to do about it?
As fire engulfs the engines, one of them revs loudly and flames out.
Engine failure, number 4.
Fire action, number 4.
Checklist, powering gear, set. Thrust lever,
Closed.
start lever,
Off.
Once one engine fails, you call for the drill to shut that one down. You have drills for certain things so that you don't fly together as a crew forever. You can fly with different people then, and you can standardise the operations.
The instruments do not indicate a fire on the plane, but the passengers can see flames erupting from the engines and stretching down the length of the 747.
I could not see the engines from where I was sitting. I could only see the space behind them. But there was enough glow in that space to convince me that the aircraft was really seriously on fire.
We were in trouble. They knew, as long as they were, they knew we were in bad trouble. And they sort of just looked at me as if to say, well, what are we doing now, Dad?
If anything's going to happen, I want to be close to you. Oh, please.
The cabin crew begins storing anything that's loose. They don't want dishes or bottles flying around the cabin if the plane begins to dive.
Don't worry, it's just friction.
If I was misleading them, then that was for a reason, because I didn't want to get as upset as I felt. I just couldn't believe it. And, and this is going through my mind, and yet I'm chatting to the passengers and chatting to the crew, saying, "Oh yeah, nothing to worry about. Yeah, it's just a little hiccup, you know." So I thought,
The 747 is more than 10 kilometers above the ocean. Its engines appear to be burning, and peculiar smoke continues to fill the cabin. And then, the unthinkable happens.
Number 2, engine's gone. All right then, begin the engine shutdown. No, wait! We've all gone. All 4 engines have failed.
The other 3 just went out almost immediately, and that's when it begins to be a serious emergency.
Those engines made a grating, rumbling sound, almost like a cement mixer. And then, gradually, the noise just disappeared and they became silent.
A minute and a half, we've gone from 4 engines running normally to having none.
The 747 has plenty of fuel, yet somehow all 4 of the jet's engines have completely stopped working.
Roger, declare emergency.
Mayday, 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 Speedbird 9. We have lost all 4 engines out of 370. Mayday, 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 Speedbird 9. We have lost all 4 engines.
With no engine power and no idea what has crippled their plane, British Airways Flight 9 begins falling from the sky.
Jakarta Control, Speedbird 9. We have lost all 4 engines, now out of 360.
First Officer Roger Greaves issues a mayday, but he has trouble getting his message across.
Jakarta Control, Speedbird 9. We have lost all 4 engines. Repeat, all 4 engines, now descending through flight level 350.
Speedbird 9, you have lost number 4 engine?
This idiot doesn't understand. Jakarta Control, Speedbird 9. We have lost all 4 engines. Repeat, all 4 engines, now descending through flight level 350.
The air traffic control at Jakarta, unfortunately, seemed to have a slight problem in understanding what we actually were saying.
Only when another plane nearby relays the mayday call do controllers in Jakarta understand.
Now descending through flight level 350.
Speedbird 9, all 4 engines out. Understood?
As far as the crew knows, no 747 had ever lost power to all of its engines before. The crew has to find out why it's happening now.
I think we've cocked something up.
We were concerned and worried that we'd done something wrong, you know, to cause the whole thing.
All 3 of us felt exactly the same, and it was a personal guilt in the sense of, what have I missed? What have I done wrong? You know, because, you know, this kind of thing doesn't happen.
While not built for gliding, even without its engines, a 747 can travel forward 15 kilometers for every kilometer it drops. With no power, Flight 9 has started a long, slow fall. Some 10 kilometers above the ocean, the crew has less than half an hour before they smash into the sea.
When they all stop, you go into automatic mode, obviously. We had practiced this drill on the simulator many, many times. And that's very good and all very well, as long as when it happens to you for real, what happens on the aeroplane is mirrored by what happens to you in the simulator. And I'm afraid that wasn't so.
In the simulator, when all 4 engines stop, the autopilot turns off. But high above the Indian Ocean, Captain Moody sees that his autopilot is still on.
We were all 3 confused and concerned that what was happening to us wasn't what we'd been told would happen to us.
All right, begin restart drill.
In the heat of the situation, they have no time to figure out why the autopilot is still on.
On. Anything? Anything? No.
Again.
All right then, from the top, battery. Check. On. Crossfeed valves. Open. Fire switch. In.
The standard restart drill takes up to 3 minutes to complete. Plunging from the sky, the crew has fewer than 10 chances to get their engines going before they run out of time.
Never on. Come on.
Again, gentlemen.
All right, from the top, battery, check. On. Crossfeed valves. Open. Fire switch. In.
At 10,000 meters, Captain Eric Moody decides to turn the plane back toward the closest airport, Halim, just outside Jakarta. But even that is too far away if he can't get at least some of the engines going again.
Jakarta, Speedbird 9, turning left back to Halim out of 300.
Speedbird 9, radar cannot see you. Squawk Alpha 7700.
Air traffic control asks them to transmit the emergency transponder signal.
Jakarta, Speedbird 9, we are already squawking 7700.
Now the crew is flying back to an airport that can't find them on radar. Without the constant rumble of the engines, the cabin is quiet. Some of the passengers feel the plane beginning to descend. But without communication from the cockpit, they can only guess.
The quietness was unbelievable because it was sort of, the aeroplane was no engines, nothing, and it seemed to be eerie, you know, a bit surreal really, because like as if you was suspended in space or something. And all you could feel was this quietness and the whimpering from a few people that were really upset.
Some people were sitting quite rigidly, almost as if they hadn't noticed anything. At first it was sheer fear, and then after a while it turns to acceptance. You know you're going to die. We knew we were going to die.
What's going on? What's the problem?
It's just a technical fault. I've been through much worse, let me tell you. Everything will be fine.
I think if I'd have sat down and really thought of exactly what was happening, I don't think I would have ever got up again.
One steward came up to us and said, "Are you two ladies all right?" And yes, we said, "We're fine," which was an absolute lie, but that's how it was. It seemed absolutely vital not to panic.
Captain Moody can't restart the engines unless he can keep the plane flying between 250 and 270 knots. But the airspeed indicators aren't working.
Captain, I've got 320 knots on my side.
Well, I've got 270.
Well, bloody hell, that's a 50-knot difference.
I'll change the speed.
Falling from the sky with no engine power, the crew now have no idea how fast they're going. But to have the best chance to restart the engines, Captain Moody has to have the plane flying at the right speed.
So from that point onwards, Eric then varied the speed through just about 100-knot range, hoping that at some point or other, coincidental with us putting the fuel into the engines, that we would actually be at the right speed.
To change speeds, Captain Moody turns the autopilot off. Then he slowly pulls the nose of the jet up to slow it, and then pushes it down to increase his speed. The upsetting roller coaster movement adds to the panic felt in the cabin.
At one time, the aircraft developed a strange motion. It seemed to be climbing steeply and then diving down. That was the sensation we got. And a bucking action that was so violent that we felt it could break the aircraft up in the air.
Pressure warning, Captain. We're at 10,000.
Pressure warning? That's not supposed to do that.
And a warning horn went off. Now, this didn't ever happen on the simulator in this exercise, so it was a bit of a surprise to us.
As well as providing electrical power, the engines on a jumbo jet help keep the cabin pressurized.
With the engines not working, of course, the air wasn't being pumped in. So gradually, the pressure was leaking away.
With all 4 engines gone, the pressurized air is rapidly seeping out. The thinning level of oxygen makes passengers gasp. The crew reach for their oxygen masks. But First Officer Greaves can't get his mask to work.
My oxygen mask, yeah, that was a problem I could have done without. It was stowed above my head. And when I pulled the oxygen mask down, the mask and the tube became separated.
The captain must make a difficult choice. If he continues to descend slowly, it will get increasingly difficult for First Officer Greaves to breathe.
I said, look, if we get down to 20,000 feet quickly, we can all take our oxygen masks off and we can talk and we're back as a crew again.
We had to actually increase the rate of descent to descend to a lower altitude quicker, which in the circumstances was something that we wouldn't really have chosen to do.
So then I dived the aeroplane and got rid of about 6,000 feet in a minute.
The loss of cabin pressure and the steep dive have another terrifying consequence.
The things shot down, they sort of dangled down in front of you. And I looked to see Stephen had got his and Chaz had pulled his out of the socket. So I made sure that Chaz got his oxygen. I've seen a few movies on planes, and you know, once that happens, you know you're in serious trouble.
Calmly. Yeah, here we go. Breathe normally, Mum, not deep. Breathe calmly.
The oxygen masks came down, and we put those to our faces as had been described in the drill, which fortunately we had been observing at the beginning of the flight. But it seemed that the oxygen supply was not working.
I'm not getting
The cabin crew try to use the public address system to explain what's going on, but it's not working. Chief Steward Graham Skinner makes do with a low-tech backup.
Can you hear me? We're having a small problem with the public address system. So if you would, place your masks over your mouth and nose and breathe normally.
As the passengers struggle with their masks, Captain Eric Moody is running out of options. If his engines don't start soon, he'll have to turn his jet around and try landing on the open ocean. High above the Indian Ocean, the seemingly impossible has occurred. All 4 engines on a British Airways 747 have stopped working, and the crew has no idea why. First Officer Roger Greaves manages to fix his broken oxygen mask, but he's still frustrated by engines that won't start.
All right, Barry, let's start the restart drill. Ready?
Set.
Battery.
Check. On.
Standby power.
On.
Anything? Come on, anything.
No.
All right, then, let's do it from the top. Battery.
Check. On.
First Officer Greaves and engineer Barry Townley Freeman have actually shortened the standard restart drill. It's giving them more chances to get the engines going, but so far nothing's working.
Come on, you old sod.
The process that we were going through the whole time was just continuous. We hadn't had any success with the drill at all, despite all the efforts we were putting in. But it was the only thing we had left to cling on to, so that's what we did.
From the top again. Battery.
Check. On.
I have no idea, and I don't think any of us have, how many times we tried to restart those engines. If I say 20, I would think that's too low. If I said 50, I would think that's probably about right.
As the plane falls lower and lower, Captain Moody faces a brutal choice. A mountain range cuts across the island of Java between his plane and the airport. He knows he has to be at least 3,500 meters high to clear it. But if his engines don't restart soon, they won't make it. At this rate, it will crash in a matter of minutes. It's just a question of where. Captain Moody decides if the engines don't restart soon, he'll turn back towards the ocean and try landing on the water.
All right, are we getting something?
It's not starting.
I knew it was so difficult to land aeroplanes on the sea, even when you had everything going for you. And I thought that, well, we haven't got much going for us here. I'd never done it before.
Hiding his concern, Captain Moody addresses the passengers and crew.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We have a small problem. All 4 engines have stopped. We're doing our damnedest to get it under control. I trust you are not in too much distress.
Most of the passengers expect the worst.
Ma, in trouble. Plane going down.
We'll do best for the boys. We love you. Sorry, Pa. I thought we were going down, heading for the ocean, which crash. And I thought if she got the note, you know, she knew we were still thinking about it. And we did whatever we could.
Will we be burnt alive? Will we be choked by the smoke? Will the aircraft break up in the air and hurtle us out into space, which was my biggest fear? Or will we come down in the sea and be eaten by sharks alive? Or will we crash into a mountain? Let's crash into a mountain quickly and get all this over.
Well?
Nothing. It's not starting.
All right, from the top then. Battery.
Check. On.
Standby power.
On.
Finally, Captain Moody has to decide. Carry on and likely crash into the mountains, or turn around and ditch into the sea.
I don't know how to swim.
I couldn't swim anyway, so I thought, well, you know, I'm doomed anyway. And I just hoped that maybe one of the passengers might help the two boys to make sure that they could stay afloat.
Well, anything? No. All right then, from the top again. Battery.
We had very few chances left of starting the engines before having to turn out to sea again, because we wouldn't have been able to clear the mountains on the south coast of Java.
Start level.
Cut off.
Fuel pressure.
Available.
Standby ignition on.
And then, as suddenly as it had stopped working, the fourth engine roars back to life.
Engine 4 back online.
Then all of a sudden there was this sort of like somebody giving the aeroplane a punch from underneath. And then I realised that it might have been an engine. It was a boom.
Oh my God, look.
The noise that a Rolls-Royce engine makes when it starts up is low rumbling noise, you know, and it was just, well, it was wonderful to hear it.
A 747 can fly with one engine, but Captain Moody knows that just one engine still won't give him enough power to clear the mountains.
The glass now is half full, it's not half empty. We're now in with a real chance, and I tell you what, the three of us would have dragged that aeroplane around the whole island of Java.
As the plane falls past 4,000 meters, another engine coughs and comes back to life.
Engine 3, back online.
It's followed quickly by the final two.
I can't believe it. Engines 1 and 2, both back online.
From almost certain disaster, the crippled jet is now under full power.
Oh my God, Mark.
I realised then that we could make it back to, not to Perth, but to an airport. That's all we wanted, was to land on the earth and you know, be part of the living again. Because while we were up there, we were dead.
Jakarta, Speedbird 9, we are back in business. All four running, all four.
This time, local controllers have no trouble understanding the message.
All four engines serviceable again. Confirm continuing to Hallie.
Affirmative, affirmative.
We say, right, let's get this thing on the ground as quickly as we can.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We seem to have overcome that problem and have managed to start all the engines. We are diverting to Jakarta and expect to land in about 15 minutes.
Captain Moody begins climbing, putting plenty of room between his plane and the mountains below. But as he does, the strange lights that he saw when the crisis began reappear in front of the jet.
Now, as soon as we got to 15,000 feet, this St Elmo's fire started again. Now, I'm not slow, so I said, let's get out of here quickly.
But before he can descend very far, the plane is stricken again.
Engine 2 is surging.
The whole aeroplane was shaking. It was just going bang, bang, bang.
The atmosphere in the cabin was very tense and very quiet. By then, I think very few people were talking. I think there were quite a lot of prayers going up.
The engines backfire violently. The captain must make another fateful decision.
Begin shutdown drill.
Checklist powering gear.
Off.
Thrust lever.
Closed.
We were reluctant to do it, as you can probably understand, but, you know, that was it. So we were back on 3 engines.
Now, I'm not a coward, but when you've had 4 engines going, no engines going, you get 4 going and show me any pilot that will quickly shut down that engine, because you're worried that they're all going to stop again.
Jakarta, Speedbird 9, leaving 154-120. We are now on 3 engines.
As the plane closes in on the airport, First Officer Greaves thinks the windshield is covered in moisture, making it hard to see through.
And I said to Eric, yeah, it's a bit misty out there. So we turned the blowers on to kind of, like demisters on your car to try and clear that. That didn't work. I used the windscreen wipers, and that didn't work.
Somehow the glass itself has been badly damaged.
For some unknown reason, I looked out the edge of my windscreen, and about a 2-inch strip down the edge on the left-hand side, I could see much more clearly, but I couldn't see anything much out the front. It was getting more and more opaque the nearer and nearer we got to the lights.
The crew get a final unwelcome surprise. Equipment on the ground that helps them descend at the proper angle isn't working.
Jakarta ATC, be advised, our glide path is unserviceable.
The localizer, which gives you the left and right of the runway centerline, that was working, but the glide slope, which gives you the actual profile for the descent, was not working.
After all the troubles they've been through, now the crew has to land their plane manually.
We then continued with Eric flying the localizer and me calling out the distance and the altitude that he should be at.
300 feet, Captain.
So he was then able to adjust his rate of descent to what I was telling him as far as the glide slope was concerned.
200. 150 feet, Captain. 100. 50 feet. 30 feet.
We're on the runway!
Reverse.
$90 knots, 80 knots.
We're down. Could really go for a cold soda.
And the aeroplane just landed itself. It seemed to anyway. It kissed the earth. It was beautiful.
Wow, that's amazing.
Safely on the ground at Halim Airport in Jakarta, passengers celebrate the end of a harrowing ordeal. They also want to know what happened. No fire had been found, so why had smoke filled the cabin? How could all 4 engines have stopped at nearly the same time? What were the strange lights that surrounded the plane? In the cockpit, the flight crew are relieved, but also concerned that they might be at fault.
The first thing that we did, having parked the airplane and shut it all down, was to then go through all the paperwork to see if there was possibly anything anywhere in it that might have given us any pre-warning of some sort of phenomenon that caused what happened to us.
Every time, because it's going to come back to us.
The damage to the 747 is extensive. From the outside, the crew realized that their windshield had been deeply scratched. They see bare metal showing through where the paint has somehow been stripped away, and they still have no idea why any of it happened. When investigators uncover the cause of the disaster, Flight 9 changes pilot training around the world. During a calm flight to Australia, all 4 engines of a British Airways 747 suddenly stopped working. After a long, terrifying descent, the crew managed to restart the engines and land.
Wow, that's amazing.
They spent an excited and largely sleepless night in Jakarta before returning to Halim Airport to inspect their plane.
And we went back the next day to look at it in daylight. The aeroplane had lost its sheen, and in some places it had been sandblasted quite well, and all the decals and the paint had come off. It was very little to see until they stripped the engines down.
The engines were manufactured by Rolls-Royce. Their investigation was led by a former engineer, Malcolm Grayburn.
3 of the engines were removed in Jakarta following the incident and were ferried back via cargo aircraft to London Heathrow and then transported to South Wales, where the engines were in fact stripped down into piece parts. And it was there that I got involved.
Grayburn was stunned by what he saw. Much of the engine was badly scratched and scored.
We did do a forensic analysis of the engines, and we did record it all in terms of photographic analysis, and also we did a lot of laboratory analysis.
Grayburn discovered the engines were choked with fine dust, pieces of rock and sand. When it was closely studied, they learned that the debris was clearly volcanic ash. Days after their harrowing flight, the passengers and crew learned that the night they were flying, there'd been a major eruption of the Mount Galunggung volcano, located just 160 kilometers southeast of Jakarta. Tom Casadevall is director of the US Geological Survey and has studied the Galunggung volcano.
Indonesia is the world's most volcanically active country. It has more than 130 historically active volcanoes, meaning volcanoes which have erupted in the last several thousand years. Galunggung erupted explosively early in the 1980s. In April, May, June of 1982, the eruptions became increasingly more powerful.
The eruptions were large and the damage was extensive. More than 60,000 people were evacuated from the area around the mountain. The night Flight 9 flew nearby, the volcano erupted again. As the ash cloud rose more than 15,000 meters into the night, winds pushed it to the southwest, right into the path of British Airways Flight 9. Never before had a volcanic cloud seriously affected an airplane. Could the ash really have crippled this flight?
Roger, declare emergency.
Mayday, 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 Speedbird 9. We have lost all 4 engines.
Unlike ash that you might see in a chimney or after a fire in a forest, this is not soft material at all. This is very fine, ground-up particles of solid rock and minerals. This material is very, very abrasive. It's very angular in shape. If you were to see it under a microscope, you would see very sharp angles. And so that's what caused the abrasion.
In addition to sandblasting the windshield and all the leading edges of the plane, could the ash cloud explain all the other strange phenomena the passengers and crew had experienced?
Remember, the aircraft is moving in close to 500 miles per hour as it's flying into that cloud. Even though it's a very fine material, it can still cause abrasion and friction on the skin of the aircraft. Because it's such a dry environment up there, that frictional electrification produces the glow that we refer to as St. Elmo's fire.
The electrification also caused the interference in communication experienced by the crew.
Speedbird 9, you have lost number 4 engine?
Some of the volcanic ash that was sucked in and ground up by the engines was also blown into the plane, and when passengers and crew saw it swirling through the cabin, they feared the worst.
You're a passenger, you're looking out the window, suddenly you start breathing this sulfur-laden air in the cabin, and it probably is a choking, probably a shocking sensation. It's essentially a house of horrors type situation.
While the volcanic ash caused the visible scarring, filled the plane with smoke and fouled communications, could it cause the engines to flame out as well?
An X-ray from front to back of the engine.
A turbofan jet engine works by sucking in enormous amounts of air. The air is then highly pressurized by the engine's compressor. This tightly packed air is mixed with fuel and ignited. The force of this reaction propels the jet through the sky.
The temperature in the combustion chamber where this ash is flowing through are around 2,000 degrees centigrade. And so the volcanic ash we know melts at about 1,300, 1,400 degrees.
But when the liquid ash reached deeper into the engine, it cooled slightly, turning into a sticky, molten goo. It attached itself to the engine and began choking it.
We got a fundamental disturbance of the airflow in the main core of the engine, which caused the engine to backfire, and the engine's flamed out, and that was the cause of the problem.
Backfires occur when the engine isn't burning cleanly.
The engine's on fire!
There's too much fuel and not enough oxygen.
Engine failure, number 4.
Fire action, number 4.
Checklist, power and gear.
On Flight 9, the backfires were the cause of the enormous jets of flame many passengers saw behind the engines. After struggling against the choking effects of the ash cloud, the engines on board the 747 flamed out. What Grayburn found next was that a remarkable piece of chemistry saved the plane.
As soon as you came out of the volcanic ash, and the engines were not running, remember, so everything cooled down, it was enough for this stuff to break off and allow the engines to restart.
When enough of the molten ash was gone, the engines were clear again, and Townley Freeman's frantic efforts to restart them paid off.
Engine 4, back online.
We have learned quite a bit, and we've incorporated this learning into pilot training. Pilots now, for example, know what signs to look for when they might be in an ash cloud, and those signs include the odor of sulfur in the cabin, dust accumulating in the cabin, and if you're at night, you might look out and see the frictional electrification or the St. Elmo's fire on the leading edges of the aircraft.
Another important lesson learned from Flight 9 is that volcanic ash clouds do not appear on normal weather radar, which reflects water. Since the clouds are dry, they're all but invisible to radar. That knowledge has led to better communications between the geologists that study volcanoes and the international airlines that fly over them. The crew of Flight 9 was showered with awards and commendations in the months after their incredible night.
I thought the airmanship displayed by this crew during this event was absolutely fantastic. The way that they managed to guide this aircraft back down to a safe landing after having been through such extreme circumstances, it was fantastic the way they recovered this aircraft. Absolutely brilliant.
For everyone on board Flight 9, the terrifying plunge through the skies had a lasting impact. Betty Tutel was so struck by the events of that night that she wrote a book about the ordeal.
This was an event which was unique in aviation history, and it seemed to me absolutely vital that it should be put on record, and I wondered who was going to do this. But no sooner had that thought entered my mind than I thought, I'm going to do that.
Tutel would also end up marrying a man she met on the flight, James Ferguson. Charles Capewell and his 2 sons made it home 2 days after they touched down in Jakarta. 25 years later, both Chaz and Stephen still live in Perth.
Our time hadn't came and that was it. From then on, I took a different view of life. When your time comes, there's nothing you can do, but you can still hope. And we hoped, and we got out of it.
Not long after their fateful flight, Captain Eric Moody created the Galungung Gliding Club. Every member of the crew and all passengers were automatically admitted to this exclusive group. The survivors of British Airways Flight 9 happily stay in touch to this day.
You wouldn't think it was a dangerous job, delivering the mail. They have to try to land an airliner in a way no pilot has ever done before.
We've lost all hydraulics.
All the controls are dead. They've become passengers in their own plane, and somehow they have to land it.
Runway.
Even at journey's end, the ordeal isn't over.
We are in an emergency.
Baghdad, November 22nd, 2003. Officially, the war in Iraq has been over for months, but the country is violent and unstable. No one feels safe. A civilian cargo plane has just taken off from the city's airport.
What's that?
Within seconds, the crew lose control, unable to figure out what has happened to their aircraft.
We've lost all hydraulics.
They struggle to master 100 tons of wide-bodied jet. Their plane is on fire. Unless they can land soon, the wing will burn up. They'll crash and die.
Steady.
They're carrying too much speed.
They're going so fast, they may not make the runway. No one has ever successfully done this before. By November 2003, the American-led coalition has been in charge of Iraq for 6 months. The Iraqi army is defeated. Saddam Hussein, the deposed president, remains in hiding. Ominously, the main threat is now from secret armed groups. They're targeting civilians, both Iraqi and foreign, in order to make the country unstable, perhaps even provoke a civil war. They have plundered Iraqi army stores for every infantry weapon there is, even surface-to-air missiles. Baghdad is a very dangerous place. Dawn, on the outskirts of the city. Claudine Vernier-Pallier from the French weekly magazine Paris Match, with her photographer Jérôme, is going to a secret meeting with Iraqi terrorists. She's after the story that everyone wants. Who are they? What do they want?
The
The previous day, she had met the leader in a hotel room. He called himself Abu Abdallah, but no one knew his real name.
Evidently, this man was very, very determined to stop at nothing, to show the Americans that he wanted no more of them, at least not their military tactics.
Baghdad Airport, key to the US presence in Iraq. Military planes fly in daily to supply the troops and to help rebuild the shattered country. Because of the threat from Iraqi terrorists, the US has established a security zone around the airport, patrolled by Apache helicopters. On the tarmac today is one of the few civilian aircraft to use the airport, an Airbus A330, belonging to the courier firm DHL. They have won the contract to carry the soldiers' mail.
They led us down little roads for a long time to be sure we would lose our bearings.
At the hotel meeting, Claudine and her photographer had arranged to meet the rebels at dawn the next morning to take pictures of the fighters with their weapons.
We arrived in a field where we met other vehicles, among them a pickup truck. The men got out of the cars. And just off the road, hidden under some branches, the men recovered some weapons and some missiles. They loaded their weapons in their vehicles, and Jérôme took the pictures we wanted.
The journalists have got the story they came for, but Abu Abdallah is not finished with them yet. He tells them to follow. They don't know where.
And he told me that a new phase in his resistance actions would be to shoot missiles at planes.
A few kilometers away, the DHL plane is getting ready to depart. 2 flights a day shuttle post and packages in and out of the war zone.
Baghdad Tower, Oscar Delta Lima Lima, Airbus A330 cargo, apron and information Sierra, requested.
The Australian Air Force is providing the air traffic control in Baghdad.
Oscar Delta Lima Lima, clear to start.
Before start, checklist. Start 2.
Captain Eric Janot is Belgian, 38 years old and single. He realized his dearest ambition a year ago when he qualified to captain the Airbus A330.
In 2:45.
Valve closed, EGT 610.
Flight engineer Mario Rafael lives in Scotland with his wife and children. At 54, he's the oldest and most experienced member of the crew, a veteran of many danger zones.
Start 1. Valve open.
The 29-year-old co-pilot, Steve Michielsen, is also Belgian. He's been married just 3 months. Cargo airlines are great places for young pilots to get the hours and experience they need to pilot commercial aircraft.
016 Kruger.
DHL has been flying into Baghdad for 6 months. There's no danger money for crew. The airport is an oasis of calm in the middle of a chaotic war zone. Nevertheless, they're aware of what's going on around them.
When we were crossing already the border from Kuwait to Iraq, the ambience in the cockpit already changed. You have a kind of stress, at least for me.
The journalists have been taken to another location by the terrorists. By now, they're beginning to get uneasy. They'd like to leave, but they have no idea where they are, and they feel that a dangerous situation will develop if they attempt to go.
So, what's going on here?
ماذا يحدث هنا؟
عندنا النهارده عندنا مشكور ركي هتشوفي.
We're going to do special operations today.
هتشوفي.
You'll see. I'll show you.
يا راجل فينك يا راجل؟ بص يا ستي. دي حبيبتنا هنا دي اسمها السام السبعة.
This is SAM 7. We have them from the old Iraqi army. We have approximately 28. We got them from 2 different Iraqi army depots. We have already fired about 25, and we only have 3 left.
They are heat-seeking missiles, equipped with homing devices which detect infrared emissions from a plane's engines.
This SAM 14, better than SAM 7. We don't have so many. I think we should use this one today. It was very good before.
Before?
في الماضي,
لا يعني قبل كده النهارده.
we shot down a plane near Nasiriyah, and my fighters recorded 177 dead. And we shot down another plane with Americans on, and we killed 70 men.
But no one had ever heard about this. I didn't believe a word of it. From all over Baghdad, you could have seen it. So I thought the guy was making it up.
So what are you going to do with this one today?
فكرك ايه؟ فكرك ايه اذا احنا نضرب طياره ثانيه؟
What do you think? We're gonna shoot down a plane.
هنوري لك يا مدام، هنوري لك.
I'll show you.
The journalists are getting worried. What if he's not bluffing after all? This is not the story they came for. It's early in the day at Baghdad Airport. A DHL Airbus A330 carrying letters home from US soldiers is just departing. The crew is unaware that just a few kilometers away, a terrorist group has its own plans for the aircraft.
Oscar Delta Lima Lima, cleared for takeoff.
Takeoff.
The plane is a 24-year-old airliner converted to carry cargo. Its first stop will be the Persian Gulf state of Bahrain. It's a journey they make twice a day.
100 knots. V1. Rotate. V2. Positive climb.
Despite the calm in the cockpit, the crew knows that below 3,000 meters, they're vulnerable to attack from the ground. So far, no plane in Iraq has been hit with a surface-to-air missile, but it's known that the terrorists now have such weapons.
It's a strange ambience, it's a strange feeling. Between the time you take off and you reach 10,000 feet, you know that you are in danger.
Gear up. Gear up. No lights.
Meanwhile, the terrorist leader, Abu Abdallah, appears to have chosen his spot.
He asked us to park our cars pointing outwards so that everybody could leave in a different direction. That's when I should have realized that the bluffing was over.
The journalists are now very alarmed. They cannot leave. They're trapped.
بص شايفه اهو في طريقه شايفه اتصدق يا راجل اتصدق اضرب يلا اضرب يا راجل يلا اضرب اعمل حاجه شايفه اضرب يا سيدي اضرب
This is video shot by the terrorists themselves. They'll deliver it to the media in Baghdad the next day.
We had 3 hydraulic systems. They are identified by color, which one is the green and yellow and blue.
Big jets depend on hydraulic power. Hydraulic fluid runs inside pipes throughout the aircraft. When the pilots move the control column, pistons push the fluid in the pipes to climb, descend, or turn the plane. With no hydraulics, pilots have no way to control their flight. The missile has exploded in the wing, where the pipes filled with hydraulic fluid are now draining. It's like driving a car at speed and suddenly losing the steering wheel.
What do we do?
What we do? What could I answer? What could I answer to him? It was a very, very difficult question he asked me.
My initial reaction was, "Ooh, we have to do something," and I asked to the captain, like, what shall we do, or any ideas or something, and he said, his initial reaction was, we have to go back.
A big jet can survive with one of the 3 hydraulic systems knocked out, maybe even 2, but all 3? None of the controls will work, period.
Bank angle. Bank angle. Blue is good. Bank angle.
I think we hit something.
Bank angle. Bank angle. Blue is gone. Bank angle. Bank angle. We've lost all hydraulics.
All 3 hydraulic systems gone. There's nothing left. The life of the aircraft is now measured in minutes.
That was the end of everything, procedures, what you've been trained all these years. And so all you needed then is to keep calm, common sense, and of course, here where your experience comes, to see whatever is left there. We had nothing to come back to, or read, or do, or follow.
That DHL is in trouble. He's on fire and he's turning back. Scramble the fire engines, have medevac on standby.
The control columns have become useless. Without the crucial hydraulic system, there's no way of moving the controls.
When you have this kind of emergency, the 3 needle showing 0, and the flight engineer saying you all hydraulic gone, you are terrified as well.
It was fear. We had no control of the aircraft, of course, initially. The aircraft continued to climb at that time until about 12,000 feet.
The plane has started to behave strangely. It climbs to nearly 3,800 meters, then suddenly starts to dive of its own accord.
Sink rate.
Then it climbs again.
Sink rate. Sink rate.
It will not fly.
Sink rate.
Back, back.
Sink rate.
This cycle repeats itself over and over again, like a mad roller coaster ride. The crew can't stop the plane's wild gyrations. They're still airborne, but somehow they must regain control.
And now, Eric, are you proud of yourself? You look in which mess you are. You know it was dangerous to come here. And what you will do now to get out of here.
I play with controls. Reduce thrust.
By moving the throttles to and fro, perhaps they can flatten out the huge dives and climbs. It's all they can think of.
And then I decide to take the challenge. We have to come back.
There is no training to fly a plane in this condition.
So from that time on, all the books and the procedures and this, they're out of the window.
We have engines. We can use the thrust.
All they have left are the 2 engines, which are undamaged. But how do you fly and land a plane with engines alone? No airliner has ever done it. Certainly not this one. In August 1985, a Japan Airlines Boeing 747 had suffered a catastrophe minutes after leaving Tokyo. The bulkhead at the back of the cabin burst open. The force of the rushing air blew off most of the tail fin and cut all the hydraulic lines. Without hydraulic power, the pilots of the 747 were little more than passengers themselves. A jet with 524 people on board, flying over the mountains of central Japan, was virtually helpless, swaying in the sky like a drunken bird.
It really could be considered a miracle that the pilots were able to keep the airplane flying for 30 minutes or more after having lost all the hydraulics in their flight controls. But it kept circling and eventually worked its way into the mountains, and it became impossible for them to land. There was no real alternative for them at all, except to fly as long as they could and hope for some miracle, which never occurred.
When the 747 hit a mountain, it was the worst single crash in aviation history. 520 people died. Can the DHL crew succeed where the Japanese pilots failed? The first task is to try to calm the wild plunging of the aircraft.
The airplane will tend to go into what's called a phugoid in the vertical mode. It will descend, speed up, therefore pick up more lift, then it would climb, pitch up and climb, it would slow down, lose lift, and so it would go into this, and it was very difficult for the pilots to control that.
They have to do it by using engine power alone, the only thing they have left. They find that if they reduce engine power, the plane's nose drops and they begin to gather speed. If they then push the throttles forward, the nose comes up and they start to climb. But they have to learn precisely when to increase and decrease power. And there's another complication. The damage to the left wing is creating drag on that side and pulling them round the left in a wide circle.
One of the most difficult things to master, to keep the pitch altitude in a normal way, was already difficult enough. And now on top of this, we had to use asymmetrical thrust because the airplane was banking to the left all the time. There was a part of the left wing which was gone.
Bank!
So they not only have to move the throttles back and forth to flatten out the plane's roller coaster motion, but also try to apply more power to the left engine to compensate for the damaged wing, which is causing it to lose lift. After several minutes of violent pitching up and down, the crew managed to flatten out the flight path.
Even after we've learned how to fly it using the throttles, we still went through I would say 3 to 4 times we went through almost uncontrollable condition, you know, couldn't control the aeroplane, like very steep dives and banks.
By now, the crew realize that they've been hit by a missile somewhere on the left wing. Their Airbus has become the first civilian aircraft casualty of the war.
I knew we were on fire, that I knew it. So my intention was to come back and land the aircraft. And also, we were afraid, I was afraid to be shot a second time.
Their fears are justified. The terrorist leader, Abu Abdallah, is waiting for a second chance to finish them off. Iraqi terrorists have fired a missile at a civilian plane near Baghdad airport. The left wing is on fire and the crew is in desperate trouble. Now the terrorists aim to finish it off.
They launched a second missile that missed a plane this time. And then he told everyone, "Let's go." And we all left quickly.
Madame Vernier-Pallier later came under a storm of criticism for not doing more to stop the attack, or at least leave the scene.
I think that any journalist in a situation we were in would have reacted exactly as we did. We have been criticized for not having said to the group leader when he told us he was going to fire on an aircraft, "No, sir, we're leaving now." On the one hand, if we had said that to him, it would have meant a bullet in the head, that's clear. And on the other hand, right up to the last minute, right up to the time when they fired the missile, I didn't think they were going to do it. I thought they were still bluffing. While we were trying to find our way back with our chauffeur, we saw that the plane, its left wing was on fire. It was now turning like this. It was like in a film. It was unreal. And it was only when we could see the plane on fire that we thought of the people on board. And then we were scared. I realized the plane could crash, that it would crash. And then I started to realize, why had they done this? It so happens we were there, we were filming, we were journalists, and we were French. So it seems evident that they had set us up. By the time we realized this, it was too late. Everything had gone too fast.
The crew knows nothing of the second missile.
Joey 2-1. Hey, Gramps, did you guys say there's an aircraft on fire?
This remarkable video, seen here exclusively for the first time, was shot with the infrared heat-sensitive camera of a US Apache attack helicopter. Apaches routinely patrol the area around the airport, watching out for terrorists.
Take time at 5-4, town.
Roger, 5-4 is observing the aircraft inbound under our sighting system. He's got, appears to be a fire on his far left engine.
The intense heat of the fire on the Airbus shows up as a blur on the helicopter's heat-sensitive camera.
Delta Lima Lima. That's Lima Lima, town. We have a bit of problems controlling the aircraft.
There was a helicopter flying, and he could see that the fire was not from the engine, but it was from the left wing.
So it gave Mario the opportunity to ask the tower again if they could still see some flames or smoke coming from the airplane.
Could you confirm if there's smoke
coming from the aircraft or fire or anything like that?
Tower Dragon Timber 5-4.
You can still see smoke and flame coming from the left tip
of the left wing.
Okay, left wing tip, fire and smoke, huh?
That's affirmative.
Thank you.
We were on a heading towards the airport. We could see the airport.
Lower the gear. Can I take control? No, I have control. I have control. Lower the gear.
With no hydraulic power, Mario has to crank open the landing gear doors and let the wheels drop down by gravity alone.
The captain said, in fact, we have to land, and he called for the gear down, which is quite normal thing to go and land.
But it has an unintended effect. Lowering the landing gear has altered the entire balance of the aircraft just when they thought they'd figured out how to control it. It causes the nose to point high in the air and the speed to fall.
No, the speed!
It could easily stall and then crash.
I didn't expect that at all, and I saw the aircraft are taking a pitch up, and then the speed decreasing, and I was retarding the throttle and say no.
The nose has gone up, their speed is falling, they're about to stall. They have no choice but to pull back the throttles to bring the nose back down again. They're nearly at stall speed.
That would have been the end of it. We would have fallen out of the sky.
You have visual on this guy? No, I'm looking right into, he's way out there. Yeah. That's gut-wrenching, man. They're up there doing everything they can.
I was afraid that maybe one wing we stole, and this time it's finished.
I think I'd rather try to crash on a runway than crash into the desert. And trying to land on a runway where you can just belly up in the desert, the sand would probably put out any fire.
Caught Cautiously, they managed to coax a bit more speed from the engines. Lowering the gear brought them to the brink of disaster, but now the plane is easier to control.
The airplane miraculously became more stable afterwards. That's one of the first factors which proves how lucky we were that day.
Let's land.
Tower, Delta Lima Lima.
Oscar Oscar Delta Lima Lima, Baghdad Tower. Can you make approach now? Runway is clear for landing.
The Apache helicopter has been joined by others who are powerless to do anything but provide information to the stricken DHL plane.
It looks like you might be too high again. I'm still looking up at the flare. Come on, buddies.
You could hear other aeroplanes talking at the same time.
Oh, crap.
And that on its own was a bit difficult.
Oscar Oscar Delta Lima Lima. Could you please clear 33 left for us as well? Because I think we don't have flight controls as well.
Oscar Oscar Delta Lima Lima, runway 33 left is available as well if you need to land there.
Okay, keep both runways open for us.
No more talking, bye.
Did you know tank 1 Alpha is empty?
Fuel has been steadily streaming out of the tanks in the left wing. Now one of them is empty.
Back, back. Yes, got it. Release down. Left wing coming up.
Against all the odds, they've made it back to the airport. An incredible feat of flying. They begin making preparations to land.
Which runway?
We use 33 right, I think.
Lima Lima.
Oscar Lima Lima, go ahead.
Could you please declare full emergency?
Yes, we need the fire brigade because our landing gears might collapse as well. Oscar Lima Lima, all available assistance is available on the field.
Everyone is on full alert.
Okay, thank you very much, and no more calls.
That guy's got him. He's pretty stressed. Rightfully so.
But on the brink of success, it begins to unravel.
At that time, I realized that we were a little bit too high to come in and land in the situation we were.
That's what I thought as well. We're too high and too near.
We must land. We are too close. We need a land final.
I mean, Steve brought a very important point here, and I think it was really a saver.
Steve is giving his captain news he doesn't want to hear. He can't land. They're too high and too close. If they attempt a steep descent, they'll bury it in the runway. Eric Janot will have to turn around, fly away from the airport for 37 kilometers, turn again, and come back on a long final approach, slowly descending.
If we haven't done this 20 miles, we would have been circling there forever until we dropped to the sky or the wind. You can't make it, it's impossible.
Keep the speed up, keep the speed up. I try, I will do the best I can.
And then I realized they were right. We have to go on long final.
But for the last 13 minutes, the wing has been on fire. Do they have enough time?
20 miles final. Okay.
He looks like he's still pretty high. You got that sight now? He's still got a long way to go, though. Yeah. But it looks like he's turning like an extremely extended final. Yeah. And I don't think I can make it in.
Time is running out. The fire is eating up the left wing. They're still heading away from the airport. Then they have to turn and make a 37-kilometer approach. Can they land before the wing fails?
If, for argument's sake, we stayed another 15 minutes in the air with that fire still burning, and maybe that tip of the wing would have broken off, and again, the results would have been disastrous.
Two main structural spars give the wing its strength. The missile has made a 5-meter-long crack in the rear spar. Too much stress and it will snap like a twig. There's another danger. Fuel is streaming out of the punctured tanks in the left wing. If the tanks run dry, an engine will stop and they'll crash.
We were controlling the bank and the pitch of the aeroplane using the two engines. So if we had lost one engine, then we couldn't do anything with the other engine. So the end result would have been disastrous.
Despite the fire, the crew's confidence is growing. Now they have some control over the plane, but the prospects for a safe landing are not good. This is the closest any commercial jet has got to a safe landing with no hydraulics. In 1989 in the United States, the crew of this United DC-10 lost all their controls after an engine blew up, and turbine blades shredded the hydraulic pipes. The pilots managed to regain some control, moving the throttles backwards and forwards like the DHL crew. There were 296 people on board. But at the last minute, as they approached the small provincial airport of Sioux City in Iowa, disaster. Of the 296 people on board, 111 died. So within 4 years, 2 major airliners had crashed because a loss of hydraulics had crippled the planes, killing 631 people. In its investigation report on the Sioux City disaster, the US National Transportation Safety Board asked for urgent research to find ways of controlling big jets that had lost their hydraulics. But over Baghdad, 14 years later, the DHL crew only have their wits to help them as they try to land.
I remember the story of the DC-10 of Sioux City, that it has been done before. The only control we still have on the aircraft in the cockpit was the engine. Nothing else.
The crew are now 28 kilometers away from the airport, getting close to where they will turn in order to make their long final approach to the runway.
15.2. Now we turn right. Not yet.
This is where experience counts now, and you have to rely on what you know.
We were pretty sure that we were going to be able to make it to the airport, but we were absolutely not sure that we were going to be able to make it to the runway.
16.5. Now we turn. 17 miles. Now we turn.
The only way they can turn is by applying more power to the left engine to make them go right and vice versa. They're swinging round to the right, trying to keep the plane steady and descend all at the same time, using nothing but the engines.
Airport at 340, come right. Now 320. Speed? 10 knots and stable, keep speed up. Yes, yes. 4,000 feet. 3,500 feet. 3,200 feet. 310 on the head.
Against all their instincts, they'll have to keep the speed up on landing, or the nose will drop and they'll crash. They should be landing at around 300 kilometers per hour, but they're coming in 100 kilometers per hour faster. No one knows if the landing gear will take the strain. As they reach 120 meters, the hot air from the ground and strong wind blowing across their flight path upset all their plans.
The wind coming from the left and the turbulence, we were drifting to the right. That's where the airport building was.
It's bumpy.
As the plane approaches the runway, the nose is pointing dangerously low and the left wing is dropping.
Sink rate.
Come on, buddy.
They're carrying too much speed. They could overrun the runway.
Sink rate. Sink rate.
Keep the speed up. We are going left. Yes, I increase. If we go to Iceland landing, may go off the runway.
They are landing 3-3 left. Fire trucks on standby, medevac on standby.
I don't think it's gonna be too wide now.
Terrain.
Steady.
40.
Steady.
You are approaching the end of your life. You realize it.
Terrain. Full. Terrain.
Come on, buddy.
30.
Back.
Terrain.
Okay.
Full. Terrain. 20.
Oh. It looks like one of his gear collapsed. Yeah, it did.
Off runway.
He's in the dirt. Dirt, or did he just come off the runway? That's what's left of him.
The DHL Airbus has managed to land through an incredible feat of flying. But their troubles are not over.
Nice landing, wow.
Confirm, evacuate.
Evacuate.
Evacuation.
Both. I handle.
A final irony. After getting safely to the ground against all the odds, one more unforeseen danger.
Straight blow.
Hey guys, don't move. That area has unexploded ordnance. Do not move.
What's that? He's saying there might be bombs here.
I don't believe this.
We're coming to get you.
The area is still littered with unexploded bombs and shells left over from the battle to capture the airport from Saddam's men.
Now when we get to you, we're gonna back up and you gotta follow in our tracks. Now we're gonna get you out of here. But you gotta walk right in my wheel tracks, okay?
Keep coming. Keep coming. It's not much further now.
Now, for the first time, the crew can see the damage for themselves. They've survived the unsurvivable. No crew has ever successfully landed such a badly damaged airliner. They had to learn and practice a whole new flying technique. But the remarkable thing is, had they known it, the technology had already been invented to save any pilot in this desperate situation. The DHL pilots have managed to fly and land a plane without any flying controls. It's the first time it's happened. Two earlier occasions, near Tokyo and Sioux City, Iowa, ended with the loss of over 600 lives. In 1989, NASA began to investigate ways to land crippled aircraft using only throttle controls. Engineers and pilots came up with software that could cope with total hydraulic failure. It's called PCA, for Propulsion Controlled Aircraft. The PCA concept is simple. Pilots tell the aircraft's flight management computer what they want to do, turn, climb, descend. But instead of sending those commands down hydraulic lines to the control surfaces, the computer orders the engines alone to do it. To test this software, this MD-11 aircraft is landing with no hydraulics and using engine thrust alone. The pilot is not moving the throttles. The PCA software is doing it all for him. Though none of the plane's normal controls were used, the MD-11's landing was not only survivable, but very similar to a normal landing.
I believe that the DHL incident has revived interest in propulsion-controlled aircraft system as an augment to perhaps the systems that we have in today's aircraft that would certainly mitigate the damage that could have been done to this aircraft, and certainly could mitigate the damage done to an aircraft carrying 500 to 600 people.
One of the enthusiasts for the PCA system is Captain Denny Fitch, one of the pilots who survived the Sioux City DC-10 crash.
This is just absolutely an amazing piece of equipment, what they have done and what they have achieved, and the success ratio that we have, the survivability that we now have with modern aircraft completely controlled in hydraulics. To have this occur again and have this aboard the aircraft is a very warm feeling as a pilot.
Blue is gone. We've lost all hydraulics.
America's Federal Aviation Administration conducted research into PCA, but soon abandoned it. It says the risk of losing all hydraulics is too low to make systems like PCA worthwhile.
The FAA's conclusion after their studies was that these events are so rare as to not require the mandate of an additional system. And of course, they did not consider the event of, or the possibility of a surface-to-air weapons attack on the aircraft.
The DHL is the first plane in Iraq to be hit by a surface-to-air missile. But in recent years, the threat of terrorist-controlled shoulder-launched anti-aircraft missiles has been growing.
There had been roughly 30-odd incidents of commercial aircraft being attacked by manned portable surface-to-air missiles, leading up to the DHL one.
What makes the risk of missile attack in Iraq so serious is that for months nobody was guarding the abandoned depots of the Iraqi army, leaving terrorists free to help themselves to millions of dollars worth of arms.
I believe there are weapon caches everywhere in Iraq. In my opinion, they also have many missiles.
There's widespread fear these terror weapons could soon be targeting passenger airliners all over the world. The US government's Department of Homeland Security is spending over $100 million on research to adapt military counter-missile technology for civilian airliners.
It is inevitable today that commercial aircraft will have to be fitted at some time with laser and infrared jamming systems. The infrared jammer will confuse the seeker for the missile, whereas the laser jammer will direct a pulse into the seeker and burn out the seeker of the missile. Singapore Airlines, Qantas Airlines, they're all looking to install something into their aircraft. If you look at things like the Queen's flight in the UK, the President's aircraft in the USA, and the King of Jordan's fleet, they're all fitted. Terrorism is with us today and will always be with us for the rest of our lives. It's impossible to defeat terrorism, but what is possible is to control terrorism at a commercially acceptable level. If we don't do that, then there's no future for us.
But miraculously, without any of this equipment, the DHL crew had brought their plane to a successful landing. It's the only confirmed occasion in history when a missile has exploded on a large civilian airliner, which has then landed without crashing. For Mario Rofael, it was a good note on which to retire.
It was a good timing, actually, to say goodbye to aviation. As I said, I've been flying for 30 years. And clean record. Even to the last minute,
We were lucky, but also we worked. We fight to survive.
I learned some things about life, maybe, but I don't think it makes me a better pilot.
The 3 DHL crew have received some of the highest awards that the civilian aviation community has to offer in recognition of an unprecedented achievement.
Teamwork was absolutely the key factor of bringing the airplane back to the ground with all 3 people alive.
On December the 30th, 2003, 5 weeks after the missile struck the DHL airliner, US General Mark Kimmitt gives his daily press briefing in Baghdad.
Of note, on Saturday, Sarhid Sarhid, a former Directorate of Military Intelligence officer suspected of leading a large anti-coalition group in the region and suspected of the downing of the DHL jetliner, died at a coalition medical facility from wounds received in a targeted raid on his complex.
The Americans believed they had killed the leader of the group that fired the missiles at the DHL. Claudine Vernier-Pallier is not so sure.
So I thought he was dead. I tried to verify this later. He wasn't dead, and it wasn't him they got. And my photographer returned to Iraq and saw this person again. He was still alive.
Et qui était donc toujours vivant.
In the fog of war, no one can say for sure whether the man who called himself Abu Abdallah is still alive. But what is certain is that the threat of further missile attacks on planes, both military and civilian, is still there.
Takeoff checklist complete.
US Airways Flight 1549 has just left New York's LaGuardia Airport.
Birds.
And that fast, we were just on top of them.
My aircraft.
Your aircraft.
Both of the plane's engines have stopped working.
Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is Cactus 1549.
The plane is falling from the sky. There are only a few seconds to decide what to do.
If we can get it for you, you want to try and land on runway 13.
We're unable.
155 lives depend on the pilots making the right call.
Hey, Cactus 1549, you can land runway 1 at Peterborough.
Can't do it.
With a bad option on the right and a worse one on the left, the crew decides to put their Airbus on the runway that's dead ahead.
We're going to be in the Hudson.
Mayday, Mayday.
New York's LaGuardia Airport, mid-afternoon.
Please take a moment to listen to this important...
US Airways Flight 1549 is a short hop from New York City to Charlotte, North Carolina.
At least it will be a little warmer in Charlotte.
Your seat serves as flotation device.
Together in the cockpit today are Captain Chesley Sullenberger, 57.
Clear to push.
And First Officer Jeffrey Skiles, 49.
We were late because the weather was bad earlier, but by this point, the weather cleared off for our departure, and it was just puffy clouds.
28 brakes released.
Spot 28 for Cactus 1549.
150 passengers are on board the European-made Airbus A330. Businessman Clay Presley is on his way home to Charlotte.
I arrived at the airport at LaGuardia. It was very cold.
It had been snowing a little bit that day, and we had a storm coming in, so we wanted to make sure we made that flight and weren't hung up or delayed on some later flights.
The crew flew in an hour earlier from Charlotte, with Sullenberger at the controls.
Your brakes, your aircraft.
First Officer Skiles will be flying the plane back to Charlotte.
My aircraft.
It's a common sharing of piloting duties.
Cactus 1549, runway 4, clear for takeoff.
Cactus 1549, clear for takeoff.
This trip marks the final leg of a 4-day sequence of flights for both men.
We made our standard call-outs. It was just a normal takeoff, normal procedures on the climb out. There was absolutely nothing at all to indicate that this would be any different than any other takeoff in my entire career.
But by the end of the day, they'll be the most famous crew on the planet.
Gear up, please.
Gear up.
Patrick Harton is one of the controllers handling traffic out of LaGuardia today. He has one of the most stressful jobs in the world.
When I sit down in front of a radar, I'm responsible for every person on every airplane under my control. And I take that responsibility very seriously.
Cactus 1549, New York departure, radar contact. Climb and maintain 15,000.
The flight will climb northeast out of LaGuardia, and then begin a slow turn south towards Charlotte.
I think I had about 3 or 4 airplanes on my frequency at that time. And it was just a normal departure. You know, it was just another flight that I've handled a million times.
Riding the thrust of 2 General Electric engines, the aircraft powers into the sky.
Cactus 1549, 700, climbing 5,000. What a view of the Hudson today.
Yeah.
After takeoff, checklist complete.
Flight 1549 is traveling at almost 400 kilometers an hour. It's been in the air for just a minute and a half.
I caught something out of the corner of my eye, and slightly to our right, but still ahead of us, was a line of birds. And they were very, very close, too close for us to maneuver around. And that fast, we were just on top of them.
You can just feel the power of the plane going forward. And then all of a sudden, there was this gigantic boom. It seemed like it stopped in midair, like you hit a brick wall. And then all of a sudden, somebody said, "The left engine's on fire."
Uh-oh. Before we could even assess the situation.
We got one roll, both of them rolling back.
Both engines rolled back to idle.
Ignition start.
Just 13 seconds after their problems began, Sullenberger takes control of the struggling plane.
My aircraft.
Your aircraft.
Get the QRH. Loss of thrust in both engines.
The QRH, or Quick Reference Handbook, is a step-by-step guide to dealing with emergencies.
Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is Cactus 1549. Hit birds. We've lost thrust in both engines. We're turning back towards LaGuardia.
When a pilot says Mayday or declares an emergency, you go from a focus state to a hyper-focus state. You just focus in on the emergency itself and, figure out the solution to the problem.
Okay, you need to return to LaGuardia. Turn left, heading 220.
220.
All of a sudden, there was a smell that came through the cabin.
Something's burning.
If fuel remaining, engine mode selector, ignition.
What I'm thinking, though, at this point is that, we're just going to have to restart an engine.
Thrust levers. Confirm idle.
Idle.
The procedure is to try to restart the engines, and I always had faith we could do that.
Airspeed optimum relay, 300 knots. We don't have that.
We don't.
Hey, Cactus 1549, if we can get it for you, we want to try and land on runway 13.
We're unable.
The conversations with Captain Sullenberger were very short and to the point, which was very appropriate for the emergency. There was a lot going on and wasn't much time to handle it. When Captain Sullenberger simply said unable, it didn't bother me. I mean, he had his hands full flying the airplane, and I understood that. So my job is just to move on to the next option.
All right, Cactus 1549, it's going to be traffic for runway 31.
Unable.
Harton still wants the jet to return to LaGuardia, but Flight 1549 is now just 1,400 feet above the ground.
Cactus 1549, runway 4 is available if you want to make left, traffic runway 4.
I'm not sure we can make any runway. What's to our right? Anything in New Jersey, Teterboro?
Okay, yeah, off to your right side is Teterboro Airport. You want to try to go to Teterboro?
Teterboro is a small airport on the New Jersey side of the Hudson River, but it's several kilometers away. And without their engines, Flight 1549 is dropping fast.
Want to try to go to Teterboro?
Yes.
When the air traffic controller pointed out Teterboro, I looked at it and I stopped, and I was kind of concerned that he was actually going to try for it. I didn't think we could make it.
So you're sitting there very quietly. People are anxiously waiting for information, and they wanted reassurance that things were going to be okay. You could hear the microphone come on.
This is the captain.
We're hoping he was going to say, I've got this under control, we're going to be okay, we're going to make it, we're going to turn around and go back and land. That's what you were hoping to hear.
Brace for impact.
What does he mean, brace for impact? And then all of a sudden it registered. I think he's saying we're going to crash.
Get your heads down!
I had no idea about how to brace for impact. Everybody's looking around, brace for impact. What do you mean brace for impact, and how do you brace?
Go ahead, try number 1.
I put it back on.
Okay, put it back on, put it back on.
While the crew struggles to fly their stricken plane, Patrick Hudson is still trying to find them an airport.
I actually worked Teterboro Airport for about 3 years, so I was very familiar with the airport.
Okay, Cactus 1549, you can land runway 1 at Teterboro.
Can't do it.
Okay, which runway would you like at Teterboro?
We're going to be in the Hudson.
I'm sorry, say again, Cactus?
I could hear him, but my mind really didn't want to comprehend those words.
We're going to be in the Hudson.
That was a death sentence for him, and I didn't want to accept the fact that it was over and there were no more options left.
I don't think we're going back to Guardia.
I just emailed my wife and just said, I love you. And I didn't say anything else because I really did not want her to worry.
Okay. Let's go. Put the flaps out.
I thought to myself, great, the Hudson River was our best opportunity. It was really the only thing in sight where we could land this airplane.
Passengers throughout the plane watch the Hudson rise to meet them and begin making preparations of their own.
So I started thinking about, if we're going to crash, I know I need to figure out where the exit rows are. If the water comes in, you need to be able to hold your breath long enough to get to those 4 or 5 rows and get the doors open if you can.
Got flaps out, 250 feet in the air.
We're not going to be able to get an engine started, so I started calling out airspeeds and altitudes.
170 knots.
To give him a situational awareness of what was going on.
Got flaps 2. A little more.
No, let's stay at 2. Got any ideas?
Actually, not.
I was so focused on what we were doing, and I always thought it would work out.
Below 300 feet, Patrick Hudson's radar can't see the plane. Flight 1549 disappears.
When the aircraft disappeared off my radar, I just assumed that there weren't going to be any survivors.
In the cabin, the passengers prepare for the inevitable.
All the passengers really started kind of pulling together, and somebody yelled out as we were going down.
Be ready at the doors.
The folks at the door says, we're ready. I was just scared to death.
We're going to brace.
Looked like the airplane was going right for the bottom of the Hudson River. All we saw was water cascading over the windshield.
It was like a tornado. Pieces of the plane were being torn apart. Some people were thrown around pretty good.
Then the airplane popped up, and it was just sort of gently rocking in the waves.
We all just sat there. We were all in shock, and we were waiting for what's next.
US Airways Flight 1549 was in the air for just 5 minutes and 8 seconds. Having made a remarkable landing, the passengers and crew now face a new danger. The plane is leaking. The ice-cold water of the Hudson is pouring into the cabin. The crew of Flight 1549 has just performed an extremely difficult aviation feat, but they still have more work to do. Captain Sullenberger heads for the cabin, while First Officer Skiles shuts down the plane.
I stayed behind and did the evacuation checklist, and so it was probably about 45 seconds before I actually went back myself in the cabin after we landed.
In an instant, the $75 million plane has become an unlikely boat floating down the Hudson River. It's now filling with freezing water.
That water was cold. It was very cold, so your feet are freezing. People came to their senses and they said, get the doors open, get the doors open.
At air traffic control, Patrick Harton has no idea the plane even made it down safely.
I didn't think anyone could survive a water landing like that. They got me off position because I was obviously in no condition to work traffic anymore.
Harton is led to his union office. Despite his ordeal, protocol demands he recount his version of events.
I really didn't want to speak to anyone. I just wanted to kind of hide under a rock. I needed my wife to know what had happened, but I knew I couldn't talk to her because I was pretty much in a fragile state and I didn't want to break down. So I sent her a simple text message. I said, had a crash, I'm not okay, can't talk now.
Passengers nearest the exits open the doors quickly, while Sullenberger and the cabin crew begin managing the evacuation.
I just jumped up very quickly and started making my way to the emergency door. And so I worked my way out onto the wing, just a few steps to start with. I started noticing that people around me had their flotation devices. They'd pulled up their seat bottoms, or they had a life jacket that they had taken. I had nothing with me.
Skiles heads back to help the crew in the cabin get passengers out of the sinking plane. He knows there's not much time, and one of the flight attendants has been injured.
I went back to about mid-cabin, and Sully and I and two young men were getting seat cushions and life vests, which are underneath the seats, and we're passing them out.
And I'm looking around trying to assess the situation. Is the plane going to blow up? What's the next step? Yeah, there were actually probably 6 or 8 people that went into the water. And they were shivering and they were cold. We started pulling them back up onto the wing.
At the back of the plane, water continues pouring in. Passengers are directed to move forward to escape.
Go over the seats if you have to.
This unwieldy boat won't be floating much longer.
We were actually in the water, up to our knees, and it was just absolutely freezing cold. Every part of your body that was in that water just ached to the bone.
Come forward! Is there anybody here?
We were very confident there was nobody left on the airplane, but what was going on the wings, we just had no idea.
Skiles and Sullenberger are the last ones off the plane.
I just saw the big splash when the plane just bounced over the water.
A small commercial airline crashed into the water.
They've been in the water more than 10 minutes already.
LaGuardia Airport has sent out an alert to New York's emergency services. In the middle of the Hudson, 155 frozen people hope that help will arrive in time.
I saw the first ferry, and I could see the wheelhouse. I felt like, okay, we're really going to be okay. There was a sigh of relief.
First on the scene are passenger ferries that have been shuttling people across the Hudson. They are eventually joined by the Coast Guard and Fire Department.
The atmosphere on the ferry was still one of concern because we didn't know whether all the passengers got off the plane at that point in time.
I was sitting in the union office preparing to make my statement.
Where do I start?
And that's when one of my friends popped their head into the office and said, hey, Patty, it looks like everyone made it. And I was like, really? That was incredible news. I mean, I was still traumatized by the event itself, but the fact that everyone made it was just, It's like the weight of the world was lifted off my shoulders.
The entire nation looks on as every single passenger and the entire crew of Flight 1549 is brought to safety.
Are you okay?
Like so many others around the world, investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board are riveted to the pictures.
Hey, you gotta see this.
We learned a little bit about the accident, of course, before we launched. The TV channels were showing the aircraft in the river and everything.
All agree that the landing is extraordinary.
I think it's a miracle, and very blessed to have walked away.
I reached over to Captain Sully and just said, I just want you to know you saved my life and everyone's lives here.
In my mind, we were dead, and every one of us came out of that alive. It's a miracle.
By evening, the plane is almost completely underwater. The current is pushing it towards the edge of the river.
The aircraft was tied up against the pier, and we went down to look at it to see what we were up against, of course. But we can't do much at night.
NTSB investigator Harold Reichel arrives on the scene.
The water was dark, of course. We just saw the tail and most of the fuselage, and one of the wings was underneath the water.
We knew it was going to be quite difficult to get it, A, out of the water, and then B, to a place where we could examine the components of the airplane in a more controlled manner.
For investigators, it's an unusual situation. Normally, their main task is to uncover the cause of a crash. With Flight 1549, the cause seems obvious.
Birds.
The original Mayday call was clear.
Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is Cactus 1549. Hit birds. We've lost thrust in both engines. We're turning back towards LaGuardia. Okay, you need to come back.
The crew reported that they hit several birds shortly after takeoff.
I think everybody realized that a bird strike had occurred. What people didn't know was what kind of birds brought the aircraft down, whether it might have been a combination of a bird strike plus something else, whether the crew acted and flew the aircraft as they should have.
My aircraft.
Your aircraft.
Get the QRH.
U.S. Airways pilot made an incredibly skillful emergency landing in the Hudson River.
Investigators want to interview both pilots, but their sudden fame makes them hard to get to.
It became a little bit more difficult than usual to A, locate the flight crew, and then B, to talk to them. They were instant heroes.
Nothing in life can prepare one for the media frenzy of a situation, like this.
And it's not just the pilot's newfound celebrity that's an obstacle for investigators like Catherine Wilson.
One of the most challenging things in this case was nobody wanted to sully Sully. He was a hero in this case, and we were the ones who was potentially going to pick apart what he did and try to find out what he did and whether it was right or not.
To prove that birds caused the crash, authorities need to get the plane out of the water. But a vital piece is missing.
We had been told earlier that both engines were still attached to the aircraft. That turned out not to be true. So that became a major goal right off the bat, was to figure out where that second engine was. We didn't know exactly where it was.
Let's focus on this area.
But we had films of the aircraft actually touching down, and we could cross-reference different things. We used some side-scanning sonar that gave us a very clear picture of the bottom.
It wasn't that easy to do because the Hudson River has a current, and the current changes throughout the day. So it took 3 days, ultimately, to find the engine.
Within days, the recovered engine and the rest of the aircraft are moved to a warehouse in New Jersey, so investigators can study the wreckage more carefully.
We certainly couldn't do it out there at the edge of the Hudson River.
And you can imagine how interesting it was to take an airplane 150 or 200 feet long through a very, very populated area in New Jersey.
As the plane is being moved, investigators work with the voice and data recorders.
Okay, let's hear it.
Which were in the most damaged part of the plane, the tail.
The cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder were in virtually pristine shape. The aircraft had sustained quite a bit of damage in the rear end, but the recorders themselves survived very well.
We were really lucky. All of the data was able to be downloaded normally.
We got one roll, both of them rolling back.
Listening to the CVR provides vital insight into how the crew responded to the emergency.
In this case, both Captain Sullenberger and First Officer Skiles acted extremely professionally.
Ignition start.
Each member had their own roles and responsibilities. They stayed with those roles and responsibilities throughout the accident flight and communicated only when necessary.
Put the flaps up.
On Flight 1549,
My aircraft.
it took just seconds for the crew to each assume their individual responsibilities. Part of the reason they handled the emergency so well was that Jeffrey Skiles had only just finished his Airbus training.
This was my first trip out as a regular line pilot in the Airbus A330. It literally was right out of training.
And the benefit of that was that he knew exactly the checklist to turn to, and that's exactly what he did.
Fuel remaining, engine mode selector, ignition.
Crews are highly trained in emergency procedures, and the main thing is to follow procedures in this instance, and that's exactly what First Officer Skiles did by grabbing the quick reference handbook and turning to the appropriate checklist.
But as investigators examine the checklist for restarting this plane's engines, they make a troubling discovery.
It was assembled for an event that occurred 20,000 feet in the air, where a crew would have plenty of time to slowly and carefully go through a 3-page checklist, the end of which was, how do we ditch the airplane?
So it was a 3-page checklist, and really, I only got to about the page and a half through this checklist in the time that we had.
Airspeed optimum relay.
The crew spent a lot of time trying to restart the engines when they could have been focusing on preparing the airplane for the ditching.
300 knots. You don't have that.
We don't.
Overly complicated checklists have played a role in deadly plane crashes in the past. In 1998, a fire broke out on board a Swissair passenger jet. The checklist the crew used for that situation would have taken them up to half an hour to complete. It's a half hour they didn't have. But on Flight 1549, the checklist was far from the greatest challenge facing Sullenberger and Skiles.
I'm not sure we can make any runway.
Water landings are notoriously difficult because unless they're perfect, they can be catastrophic. In 1996, after a hijacking, an Ethiopian Airlines captain tried to land off the Comoros Islands when his plane ran out of fuel. His left wing hit the water first, causing the plane to cartwheel. It was ripped to pieces. Of the 175 people on board, only 50 survived. Investigators soon learn that none of the major airlines use simulators to teach pilots how to land on water.
Training for ditching in a simulator is very difficult. We don't have the models to accurately simulate what an airplane would do when it touches down on water. Given the rarity of this type of event, it would be very difficult to justify training pilots for this type of event.
But even without ever going through a simulation, Captain Sullenberger got almost everything right. He kept the nose up and wings level. He let the tail hit the water first, slowing the jet down enough so that it survived the impact.
Nice flying.
NTSB investigators turned to their own simulation to answer a vital question.
This is the captain.
Did Sullenberger have to land in the Hudson?
Brace for impact.
Or could he have made it to a runway?
Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is Cactus 1549. Hit birds.
Investigators studied Chesley Sullenberger and Jeffrey Skiles' actions in the moments after their plane collided with birds.
Ignition.
We wanted to know, did the pilots do the right thing? So what we did in the simulator was we tested exactly that. Was there enough energy to make it back to LaGuardia? And what we found was that about 50% of the time we were able to make it back to the airport.
But when a 35-second delay is imposed after the bird strike to account for the crew's attempt to restart the engines, all of the simulator pilots crash before reaching the runway.
When we took into consideration the decision-making process that Captain Sullenberger went through, we realized that it was not possible to make it back to the airport.
Cactus 1549, runway 4 is available.
There's no doubt.
We're going to be in the Hudson.
Putting the plane in the Hudson was the right call. Sullenberger didn't have enough altitude to glide to either LaGuardia or Teterboro airports.
Got one roll. Both of them rolling back.
The investigators also discover that Sullenberger made a decision that wasn't at the top of the checklist, one that was critical to the survival of everyone on board.
I'm starting the APU.
On commercial jetliners, the engines provide power to electrical systems. If the engines stop working, the crew eventually loses those systems. The APU is an emergency generator that keeps some things running.
The APU allowed him to still see his screens, the instruments still worked.
It also allowed the A330 itself to assist with the heroic landing. The APU provided power to the plane's electronic brain, stopping the pilots from making any potentially dangerous moves. It kept them inside a so-called flight envelope.
By starting the APU early in the sequence, the flight crew was able to maintain the flight envelope protections, which prevented the airplane from stalling when the airspeed got too slow.
He's right on the edge of stall speed.
The flight data shows that Sullenberger was going slower than the ideal speed.
The airspeed during the accident sequence got about 20 knots slower than it should have been for this flight.
But the A320's flight computer is designed to constantly adjust the plane's pitch and keep it from stalling.
We definitely could have had a much more catastrophic outcome had the airplane actually stalled.
Starting the APU.
Sullenberger's quick thinking made sure the plane's complex computer system kept working. It gave him an automated safety net, so he'd have the best chance to do the nearly impossible.
We're going to be in the Hudson.
It was a combination of a good crew and a good airplane.
Let's go. Put the flaps out.
The captain had the presence of mind, for instance, just before they were about to land, a couple of 100 feet in the air, to turn to the first officer and ask,
Got any ideas?
Actually, not.
They were both coordinating right up to the end, and that's what we like to see.
Skill, training, and the aircraft's very design combined to save the lives of 155 people. But investigators still want to know how birds crippled two highly advanced jet engines, and if they can stop it from happening again. 8 days after the crash, investigators are finally able to examine the engines in detail. Richard Dolbear has spent much of his career studying collisions between birds and airplanes.
When aircraft strikes a bird, generally there's not much left of the bird, particularly if that bird goes through the engine.
The engines are analyzed piece by piece to try and figure out exactly what happened 3,000 feet above New York.
Let's look inside.
We expose the engine surfaces to a black light. Proteins from many tissues will fluoresce with a black light. Much of the tissue was already gone, but many of the proteins stayed on the surfaces of the engine.
Look at that.
Deep in the right engine, investigators find about a cup of charred remains.
Most of the remains found were just muscle tissue, bone fragments, and minuscule feather remains. I was able to find about 29 samples in one engine and 14 in the other.
But the engines aren't the only part of the plane that's been damaged.
Birds.
The aircraft hit many birds. So we found evidence on the wings and on the flaps and on the fuselage, but the plane can still fly when that occurs.
The threat posed by bird strikes is well known.
Bird strikes are a much bigger problem than the general public realizes. In the last 20 years, there have been approximately 210 aircraft that have been destroyed because of collisions with birds.
This Boeing 757 ingested a crow while taking off from Manchester, England, later landing safely. In 2008 alone, there were 4 dramatic accidents. A Boeing 747 sucked a kestrel into one of its engines. The crew aborted takeoff and survived. The plane was ruined. This jet ingested pelicans into both engines, and one ended up in the cockpit. Repairs cost $2 million. The engine of an MD-10 was severely damaged by a gadwall. The repair cost was $900,000. And 5 people were killed when this Cessna smashed into at least one pelican. More than 200 people have died in bird strike accidents since 1988. The problem could get worse because there are more birds out there.
By restricting the use of pesticides that were hazardous to birds, such as DDT, we've seen a tremendous rebound in the populations of bird species. A remarkable increase in the Canada geese that are resident, non-migratory birds. Nationwide, the population has grown from about 1 million to about 4 million.
At LaGuardia, one of the airport's biggest problems is a year-round goose colony on nearby Rikers Island.
From the year 2002 to 2004, there were 8 Canada goose strikes at LaGuardia Airport. It involved birds either on the airport or right off of the airport. One of those strikes almost caused a plane to crash, and it was a very close call.
For the past several years, airport officials have rounded up hundreds of geese from Rikers Island and euthanized them. It's controversial, but should be effective.
So, where did these birds come from?
If the geese that hit US Airways Flight 1549 were local, they can be controlled. Investigators need to know more about them.
The remains that we did find were so small that we couldn't really tell what type of birds. We enlisted the help of the Smithsonian Institution. They can take remains, even very small remains, small pieces of feathers or flesh or whatever, and they can identify them.
The hope is that DNA analysis of the remains will not only confirm the bird's species, but also offer clues as to where they came from. While they wait for answers, investigators turn to answering the question of how a few birds forced a 68-ton jet from the sky. Before they can be used in a passenger jet, engines undergo rigorous testing to prove they can perform under extreme conditions. The tests include ingesting frozen bird carcasses. The CFM turbofan engines that power the A330 passed those tests and was certified in 1996.
The large bird test required for the CFM engine is shooting a 4-pound bird from an air cannon into the engine, which is running at near full power.
To pass, the engines don't have to keep running. They only have to stay together, which they did on Sullenberger's plane.
Well, the engines did not experience what we call uncontained failures. No large chunks of fan blades or anything flew out through the cowls to hurt people inside the airplane.
Fan blades are always the most interesting part to look at, and they often tell quite a story.
A series of fan blades throughout the engine compress incoming air until it's ignited in the core, creating thrust. Ingested birds can wreak havoc on this process.
When a fan blade of an engine fails, it causes a lot of continuing damage. In this particular case, all the fan blades were there. They suffered severe damage, but none were broken.
An analysis of the engines shows that while the primary fan blades survived the impact, the delicate machinery inside the cores of both engines did not.
Uh-oh. We got one roll, both of them rolling back.
Once we went into the engine itself, into the core, we determined that there was significant damage. When a bird gets ingested into the core, it is such a large mass compared to these blades that it does a lot of damage to them.
The birds ingested into Flight 1549.
Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is Cactus 1549.
Ripped apart the engine's compressors. Metal shards from these broken compressors were sucked deep into the cores of both engines, shutting them down.
We've hit birds, we've lost thrust in both engines.
When DNA results come back from the Smithsonian Institution, investigators finally understand why Flight 1549 lost both its engines. The birds that struck Sullenberger and Skiles' aircraft were adult Canada geese. They were far larger than anything the engines were ever tested for.
Because of that analysis, we know that these birds ingested each probably weighed about 10 pounds.
The tests also confirmed that as many as 4 large birds had hit Flight 1549's engines. It was simply too much for them to handle.
Rarely do birds get ingested into the core of the engine. Rarely does an engine ingest the bird and then stop running completely. That's a very rare event.
Ignition start.
What makes this one even rarer is that both engines ingested birds and both shut down.
We're going to be in the Hudson.
The DNA test also proves that the geese involved in this accident were not the local geese that LaGuardia has worked so hard to manage.
These were geese that had been in northern Canada during the preceding summer. They were migratory geese.
The collision between the migrating geese and Flight 1549 happened 7 kilometers from the airport. It means that none of the existing programs for reducing the number of birds would have prevented the collision. It also means that what happened to that flight could happen again, unless a way can be found to keep birds and planes apart.
Romeo Whiskey 2-1, radar contact, Walsh, report 20 DME southeast Melville.
Every year, about 2 million planes pass over New York's airspace.
Most people do not appreciate the problems that birds can cause to aircraft. They don't realize how a small, seemingly insignificant organism in relation to the size of an aircraft can cause these kinds of catastrophic failures.
The airline industry needs to find solutions to bird strikes. Placing screens in front of the engines is one of the most obvious answers, but there are serious drawbacks.
Screens can fall off, screens can break, and then they would be ingested into the engine, causing similar damage or more catastrophic damage.
Screens can also introduce turbulence to the airflow, which can starve the engines of air, causing them to fail. Winter weather is also a serious problem for engine screens.
A screen is a perfect ice builder, and it will accrete ice very quickly in icing conditions.
A more promising solution is already being tested in several American cities, including New York. At John F. Kennedy Airport, specialized radar is sweeping the skies looking for birds near planes. Most airports are equipped with radar that sends out radio waves that simply bounce off objects in the sky. Typically, only large objects are seen, and most of this information isn't passed along to air traffic controllers.
The fact is that their scopes would be cluttered with things. Tall masts from ships, for instance, would pop up on their radar as low targets. The clutter, in fact, would interfere with air traffic control, and that's not a good thing.
But now, finely calibrated avian radar is being tested at JFK. It can distinguish items the size of hummingbirds. If any birds are detected moving through flight paths, crews could be alerted.
I would love to see bird radar technology. The key would be how to incorporate that without increasing workload to an already stressed controller.
Tests continue, but widespread use of avian radar is still years away.
Cactus 1549, runway 4, clear for takeoff.
Cactus 1549, clear for takeoff.
Until then, collisions between birds and planes will continue. What the safe outcome of Flight 1549 proved is that right now, the best defense against this threat is a good team in the cockpit.
We had a very experienced flight crew with very good training.
My aircraft.
Your aircraft.
Get the QRH.
All your training that you've done, all the years that you've been flying the airplanes, it all just comes back to you when you need it.
My aircraft.
Your aircraft.
Sully and I worked together extremely well on this event. I knew what was in his mind, and he knew what was in my mind. We were both accomplishing our individual roles, but we had a knowledge of the whole situation.
Okay, you need to return to LaGuardia. Turn left, heading 220.
220.
This event definitely puts things in perspective for you as a controller. One thing I appreciate more, the teamwork and how when you work together, you can pretty much accomplish whatever you need to accomplish.
Off to your right side is Teterboro Airport. You want to try and make Teterboro?
We're going to be in the Hudson.
The landing in the Hudson took training and skill. It also took a bit of luck.
We had a very clear day. We had a perfect condition for the river. So there was just a series of really fortunate events that occurred that assisted this crew in landing successfully on the river.
Well, the safety board, we don't really deal in miracles very often, but this event had a lot of things that came together at the right time and the right place. And so a lot of us are thinking, well, maybe we do have a miracle here.
What a view of the Hudson today.